My cheating wife's affair partner demanded I surrender her, but I got my revenge swiftly and justly. I'm Tom Williams. I used to be married to Kayla Williams. We were together for 17 years before everything fell apart. Naturally, I got blamed for it. Divorce courts in this country always seem to side with the woman, giving her full custody so she can turn the kids against their father. It feels like the divorce laws were designed by people who hate men. We had 2 kids, a 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought our life was great. I loved my wife, and I believe she loved me. Our kids were smart, athletic, and well-adjusted. Carly, our daughter, was a daddy's girl, and Josh, our son, was friendly and athletic. I was doing well as a mechanical engineer, and Kayla had a good job as an accountant. We both stayed fit and looked good. Carly idolized me. She was good at math and science and wanted to be an engineer like me. She got her driver's license at 16 and loved cars just like I did. We spent weekends at car shows and working on my collection of old GM cars. She also helped me with home improvement projects, learning basic plumbing, electrical work, and more. While she went to her mother for girl issues, she came to me for everything else: homework, friend drama, boys, and advice. We were very close. Josh, on the other hand, wasn't into cars. He was more interested in English literature and civics, and talked about becoming a lawyer. He was closer to his mom lately. Kayla seemed a bit off, distant, and zoning out. I asked if everything was okay, but she brushed it off. One Friday evening, I came home at my usual time, p.m. Kayla was already home, but there were no dinner smells, and Carly didn't greet me. I assumed she and Josh were out with friends. I went upstairs to change and saw that Kayla had laid out a little black dress, hot underwear, stockings, and inch heels. It looked like we were going out, but she hadn't told me. Kayla was still in the bathroom putting on makeup when I walked in. "Where are we going, sweetheart?" I asked, starting to take off my dress shirt. "We aren't going anywhere," she replied. "Then why are you getting all dressed up with a hot outfit laid out on the bed?" "I'm going out, not we." "Really? And where exactly are you going dressed like that without me? Where are the kids?" "The kids are spending the night with friends. I'm going on a date tonight, and I probably won't be home until tomorrow morning." "What do you mean, your date? And you won't be back until morning?" "Exactly what I said. If it goes well, I'll be spending the night with him." "No way. You think I'll put up with that? If you want to cheat, you can wait for the divorce." "Stop being stupid. There will be no divorce. I just need this one night to prove I'm still attractive to other guys. If you really love me, you'll let me do this. If you loved me, you wouldn't even consider it." "I do love you, but I need this. I'm getting older and need to feel attractive to younger men. Clarence is 10 years younger and has been flirting with me for 6 months. I finally accepted his offer. It's just one night of love making to boost my ego. I'm not putting up with it. Remember our wedding vows? You're breaking them. Don't be silly. It's just one night. I promise it won't happen again. Are you stupid, or do you think I am? After breaking your vows, you think I'll trust a private promise? If you go through with this, we're done. Walk out that door and I'll see a lawyer." "Don't be an idiot. There will be no divorce." "I'll come home and be the loving wife I've always been. If you try to divorce me, I'll fight and you'll lose the house, most assets, and custody. I'll mess with your visitation and blame you for breaking up the family, making the kids hate you. You say you love me, yet you'll do all that." "Yes, I love you, but I'll fight if you try to divorce me. I just need this one night. And in a few years, what then? When you feel old again, will you find another younger man? I promise it won't happen again. It's just love-making, no love. You won't take me away from you. Maybe I'll even learn something to spice up our bed life. If you do this, I've already told you the consequences. Cancel now, and we can try marriage counseling. Don't be stupid. We'll be fine. If you insist on counseling, we'll discuss it when I get back tomorrow." She continued getting ready. I changed and left the room. Later, she came downstairs dressed up, clutch in hand, checking herself in the mirror. I was in the living room when I heard a car honk outside. "He's here. I've got to go. I'll see you in the morning," she said, walking over to kiss me goodbye. I turned away and she kissed the air. She frowned at me. "Fine, be that way. Once you're over your hissy fit, everything will be back to normal." She turned toward the door. I made one last plea. "If you walk out that door, we're done. Think hard about whether this is worth throwing away years of marriage." She turned back to me. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'll be back and everything will go back to normal." With that, she opened the door and walked out. I started crying, mourning the loss of my marriage and the woman I loved for 20 years, 17 years of marriage, a year of engagement, and 2 years of exclusive dating. She never showed any dissatisfaction. We had a decent bed life, and she never asked for more. We hadn't been fighting. We discussed and resolved our disagreements. After half an hour, realizing she wasn't coming back, I began executing my plan. We had a large 4-bedroom house. the master bedroom, Carly's room, Josh's room, and a guest bedroom with a private bathroom. This would now be my temporary bedroom. It took hours to move out of our old bedroom. I knew our divorce wouldn't favor me since we lived in a no-fault state. Divorce laws here were biased against men, giving wives the house, kids, child support, and maintenance, leaving husbands with the bills. I set up my new living space and went to my home office to manage our finances. I had an account in my name for buying her gifts. I transferred half of our joint checking and savings into it, paid off and canceled our credit cards, then applied for new ones in my name. I planned to transfer my direct deposit and split our investments on Monday. I poured myself a Jim Beam and went to bed, but couldn't sleep well. The bed felt empty without her, and my mind raced with thoughts of what I could have done to stop her. Should I have stopped her physically? Gone after the guy with a bat or weapon? It was a long, restless night. At dawn, I showered to wake up, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and had breakfast. By 9 a.m., Kayla waltzed back into the house. "Good morning, honey. I'm home just like I promised," she said cheerfully. I ignored her. My rage had built up overnight. I realized I didn't deserve her disrespect, and that stopping her wouldn't have changed anything. If I had stopped her last night, she would have tried again. My love for her turned into hate, fueled by her disrespect, threats, and dismissive attitude. I spent hours focusing on that. "Honey, where are you? I'm home just like I said. I even cleaned up before coming home for you," she called out as she searched for me. "Oh, there you are," she said, opening my office door. "I'm back and now everything can go back to normal," she added, coming over to my desk with her arms out for a hug and kiss. I pushed her away. "Keep your filthy lips away from me. Who knows what they've touched or what's been in your mouth?" Her eyes widened in shock. I had never spoken to her like this before. Before she could respond, I continued, "You need to get a full STD test and show me a notarized clean report before you touch me again. As for lovemaking, I wouldn't touch you with a 10 FT pole, even with a dozen condoms on it." Her shock turned to anger. "I see you're still dealing with your bruised ego. I'm going to our room to nap. I had a long night and need rest. Hopefully you'll calm down and we can talk later. I expect an apology for your rudeness," she stormed out. I smiled, anticipating her quick return. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, storming back. "Where are your clothes? Your toiletries? What do you think you're doing?" "What do you mean?" I asked calmly. "Your closet is empty. Your drawers are empty." "What do you mean? Everything is where it's supposed to be. My clothes are in my closet, or my toiletries are in my bathroom." "They are not. I just checked. You're mistaken. You think of your bedroom as ours. My stuff is in my new bedroom." "In your bedroom, you mean?" "Yes, I moved out of your bedroom. I'll stay in my new room until I find an apartment." Her eyes narrowed in irritation. "We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to get over your fit. Then I expect you to move everything back and we'll go back to normal." "Not until I have that notarized report," I replied, turning back to my computer. I stayed in my office most of the day. The kids came home early in the afternoon. I wondered how long it would take them to notice the problem. I found some promising apartments and scheduled viewings for Tuesday. I printed our financial statements for my lawyer appointment on Monday. I knew I'd get screwed in the divorce, but I wanted to be prepared. "Daddy, dinner is ready," Carly said, poking her head in the door. "Okay, sweetie." Kayla was smiling brightly when I entered the kitchen, clearly trying to eliminate me with kindness. She had dressed up, done her hair and makeup, and made my favorite meal. As I entered, she handed me a glass of wine and leaned in for a kiss. I leaned away, took the glass, walked to the sink, poured it out, and set the glass on the counter. I then poured myself a tumbler of Jim Beam. The kids at the table definitely noticed. I sat down at the table and chatted with the kids, ignoring my wife. Dinner was strained. I tried to keep the conversation going with the kids, but it was clear there were serious problems. I didn't put anything on my plate or eat, despite the dishes being my favorites. I just sipped my drink and talked to the kids. "Dad, aren't you going to eat?" Josh asked. "Nope, not hungry," I replied. After the most awkward dinner ever, I refilled my drink and went back to my office without helping to clear the table. Half an hour later, I shut down the computer, grabbed my truck keys, and left for a quiet restaurant. I had dinner, then went to a bar for a couple of drinks. It was late when I got home. Seeing Kayla's light on, I made sure to close my door loudly. I locked it and slid a chair under the knob. She tried the door and knocked, but I ignored her. I was up early the next morning and decided it would be a football day. There were 3 games, and I planned to watch them all, ignoring weekend chores. I had almost finished a pot of coffee and started making omelets. I finished mine when Carly walked in. "Hey, sweetie, want an omelet?" I asked. "Sure, Dad, thanks," Carly said. She got her juice and sat at the table as I cooked her food. A few minutes later, Josh came in. I'll make yours next, I told him as Carly ate. I heard Kayla in the hallway, so I poured the last cup of coffee for myself and turned off the pot. She came in, got a cup, and glared at the empty pot. You couldn't leave a cup for me? She asked. The pot's right there. You know how to make it, I replied. Whatever. So you're making omelets? She asked. Made them, just finished. Feel free to make yourself one, I said, slipping Josh's omelet onto his plate. I had used the last of the ingredients and put everything away. Having taken care of the kids, I left the kitchen. Just before noon, I was in the living room watching the game. Kayla came in with a plate and a bottle of beer. I brought you lunch and a beer so you wouldn't miss the game, she said, cheerfully. Without a glance, I swept both off the table with my foot. Shocked, she stood there as I went to the kitchen and got myself a beer. I didn't clean up the mess. She brought it, she could clean it. I didn't care if it stained the car carpet. I wouldn't be living there much longer. We need to discuss this, Caleb, she began. Shut up, the game's on, I replied. For God's sake, you need to fix your attitude. The kids have noticed, she said. They'll notice when I move out anyway, I said. You're not moving out, and there will be no divorce, she insisted as she stormed away. Later in the afternoon, Carly and Josh approached me during halftime. Dad, what's going on with you and Mom? Carly asked. You may as well know, your mother and I are getting a divorce. This has nothing to do with you. We both love you. This is between us, I explained. But why? Josh asked. Because your mother did something I can't accept. Even after I told her my feelings, she wasn't remorseful, I said. You mean her date on Friday night? Carly asked. You know about that? I was surprised. Yeah, Mom told us you weren't happy about it, Carly said. So you know she cheated on me, I stated. No, she didn't. She told you beforehand, so it wasn't cheating. She didn't sneak around. It was only one night out of the 20 years you've been together, she said. If you really loved her, you'd let her have that one night and move on, Carly explained. I was shocked and hurt that my daughter wasn't even trying to understand my side. She had taken her mother's side completely. Really? If she truly loved me, she wouldn't even consider having lovemaking with someone else, I said. Dad, it was just one time. She promised it would never happen again, Carly insisted. Let's talk about promises. Over 17 years ago, she made a vow before God, our families and friends, to forsake all others until the end of life. How can I trust any private promise now? I asked. But you also vowed to stick with her in good and bad times, Josh pointed out. True, but her breaking her vow releases me from mine, I replied. Why break up the family over one night? Carly asked. Why am I blamed for her actions? She broke the vows, not me, I said. Mom wants to move on and put this behind us. You're the one making a big deal and breaking up the family, Carly insisted. It didn't get better after that. They weren't listening. Kayla had convinced them that Mommy needed this, and Daddy's ego was causing all the problems. They thought I was overreacting. Eventually, they stormed out when it was clear I wouldn't agree. I watched the rest of the game in peace. Later, I smelled dinner being prepared but ignored it. When Josh told me dinner was ready, I grabbed my truck keys. Where are you going? Dinner is ready, Josh asked. I'm going to the sports bar to watch the game. I'll eat there, I replied. But Mom fixed. I'll be back after the game, I said, cutting him off. I hung out at the bar, enjoying a burger and beer. I only had one beer per quarter, so I was fine to drive. By the time I got home, everyone was in bed. The plate and bottle from earlier had been cleaned up, which made me smile. Monday morning, I left early. I called my broker first and had him split our investments into a new account in my name. Then, I contacted HR to remove Kayla from my retirement account and added Carly and Josh as heirs. I also changed my direct deposit to my new bank account. Finally, I told my boss about the divorce and needing time off for meetings and court dates. He was supportive. My lawyer confirmed my fears. I was likely to get screwed in the divorce. Custody would depend on where the kids wanted to live, and given our recent conversation, I wasn't hopeful. The lawyer began the paperwork, and I asked him to have Kayla served at work on Monday. After work, I went to the sports bar for Monday Night Football, ignoring Kayla's texts and calls. I let Carly know where I was, but her response wasn't pleasant. When I got home, they all gave me the evil eye. I went straight to my office, then later to bed after everyone was asleep. Tuesday morning, I left early again. Work was fine, and I took the afternoon off to look at apartments. I chose a nice 2-bedroom unit and put down a deposit, planning to move in on Saturday. I bought a couch, table, and chairs from a secondhand store to be delivered that afternoon. I decided to take my bed and everything from my home office. They were eating dinner when I got home. Noticing they didn't set a plate for me, I snickered. I wasn't going to eat it anyway. I made a huge sandwich, grabbed chips and a beer, and went to my office. Dad, why are you being such an a-hole? Carly asked, coming into my office. Because your mother cheated on me, disrespected me, and threw it in my face. I clearly told her what would happen if she went through with it, and she did anyway. You can't be breaking up the family over that. It was just love-making. Carly, someday you'll be married. How would you feel if your husband told you he had a date with a younger, prettier woman and planned to spend the night with her? I wouldn't like it, but if he promised it was just one time, I'd try to get past it. Besides, if he told me, it wouldn't be cheating, right? Imagine saying your vows and telling your groom you plan to screw another man. Think about the devastation in his eyes. I turned back to my work. Wednesday evening, both sets of parents were at the house when I got home. I actually got along well with my in-laws. Her dad was a gearhead like me. My parents were loving and supportive, and we got along great. I saw the ambush. I understood why her parents were there, but I was confused about my parents being there too. Tom, Charles began, we're disappointed in Kayla, but you're overreacting. She made one mistake in years. You don't need to tear the family apart for one small mistake. Seriously? It wasn't a small mistake. It was planned. She ambushed me an hour before leaving, giving me no chance to fight it. It was a deliberate plan to cheat. Son, Mom said, she didn't cheat. She told you first. What she told me didn't ask. Even when I objected, she didn't care. I told her this would happen if she went through with it. Tom, Dad added, we understand your pain, but think about the family. Kayla still loves you. With counseling, you can get past this. Don't tear your family apart. We raised you to be good, man. Think about your mother and me. We will do whatever necessary to keep our relationship with our grandchildren. I was stunned. My parents were actually siding with her, telling me to overlook her cheating. I couldn't take it anymore and went to my bedroom, shutting the door in her face. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I walked through the living room without saying a word, ignoring their attempts to talk to me. I got in my truck and went to the sports bar for dinner and beers. The house was quiet and dark when I returned 4 hours later. Thursday and Friday were the same. I ignored Kayla, and the kids stayed mad at me. I was surprised Kayla hadn't noticed the credit cards not working yet. She'd figure it out during her Saturday shopping. Friday evening, I was in my office when Kayla came in wearing a transparent nightie, stockings, garter belt, and heels. The kids are out tonight. It's time for you to get over this and come to bed. I want you to make love to me all night. I need you to take me back, she demanded, her voice filled with a mix of desperation and desire. No thanks. I haven't seen a clinic report proving you're disease-free, I replied coldly, not even looking up from my desk. Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed now. Come on, I'm aroused and need lovemaking, she insisted, her tone becoming more insistent and frustrated. Not interested, I said flatly, turning another page in my book. If you don't, I'll call Clarence again, she threatened, her voice dripping with anger. So much for it being a one-time thing, I shot back, my voice laced with sarcasm. Damn it, it was. But if you keep rejecting me, you're pushing me back to someone else, she snapped, her frustration boiling over. Have fun. Let me know if you're bringing him here so I can leave, I responded, not bothering to hide my disdain. She stormed out, and half an hour later I heard her leave, tires screeching. With the house empty, I packed up my things, took apart the bed, and loaded my truck with my clothes. I slept on the sofa in my office. The next morning, I got the apartment keys and moved everything with help from friendly neighbors. No one was home when I returned, so I had a neighbor's son help me load my desk and office furniture. I took the recliner too. Later that evening, my daughter called. Daddy, where are you? She asked, her voice filled with confusion and worry. I'm at home, sweetheart, I answered, trying to keep my tone calm and reassuring. No, you aren't. Your office is cleaned out, the spare bedroom is empty, and your recliner is gone, plus your truck is missing, she listed, her voice rising with each observation. You're right. I moved into an apartment after the divorce. Maybe I'll get another house, I explained, trying to keep the conversation as matter-of-fact as possible. God, Dad, I can't believe you're being such an a-hole about this. I thought you loved us, she exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. I do love you, sweetie. Always will, I assured her, feeling a pang of guilt. Just not enough to stay, she accused, her voice filled with hurt. I'm not abandoning you. You can see me anytime. I'll still take care of you and your brother, I promised, trying to make her understand. You left us and are breaking up the family, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Your mother broke up the family. I told her this would happen if she went on that date. She did it anyway, I reminded her, my own frustration creeping into my voice. She thought you loved her enough to get past it, she said, her tone softening slightly. And I thought she loved me enough not to do it, I countered, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Fine, whatever, she hung up, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The divorce was a nightmare. She fought it, wanted counseling, and wanted me to pay. I refused. I argued she should pay for it. I won that argument. The counselor didn't like me because I told him I was ordered to attend but didn't have to participate. After 12 sessions, the counselor gave up. She fought over everything, even things she despised, like the poster in the garage and the Bud Light lamp. It was all to make the divorce harder for me and to interfere with my time with the kids. The judge granted the divorce. I had to pay half the mortgage, and she kept the house. I paid a month in child support and a month in spousal maintenance for years, which would end if she remarried. She moved Clarence in before the divorce was final. Half my paycheck went to her. I cashed in some investments and bought a fixer-upper house. I moved in with my tools and started repairs in the evenings and weekends. Visitation was a disaster. Kayla made it difficult, and the kids were busy or hostile. Eventually, they told me they didn't want to see me anymore. Forcing them would have caused more resentment. I sent gift cards and letters for birthdays and Christmas, but they were returned unopened. My checks were cashed, but I never heard a word. I informed them about their college funds, and they responded with, "No thanks." Kayla poisoned my kids against me. I focused on work and my house, saving money by not going out. One day, I called my mom. "Hey Mom, how are you doing?" "Well, how are you?" she replied cheerfully. "I haven't heard about Thanksgiving. Are you hosting it?" After a pause, she said, "Yes, but Kayla, her parents and the kids are coming. She's bringing her new man. We thought it would be too awkward for you to be there." "Seriously, Mom? You're choosing my ex-wife and her boyfriend over me?" "We want to keep our relationship with the grandkids. This is your fault. You should have kept your family together." "How about Christmas Eve? We'll be at Kayla's on Christmas Day." "Forget it, you don't have a son anymore," I said, ending the call. I spent Christmas Eve watching Die Hard, ignoring calls and texts from my mom. The packages I sent to my kids had been returned. 5 years later, I got a wedding announcement. Kayla married Clarence the weekend after my last maintenance payment. With Josh turning 18 a year earlier, my child support ended too. I celebrated by getting drunk. I had worked hard and loved them only to be rejected. Now free of my obligations, I decided to move on and forget about them as much as possible. One thing bugged me. I still had to pay half the mortgage. That ended when Josh graduated, but my name was still on the deed. Kayla thought the house was hers, but the divorce agreement only let her live there until the kids finished high school. I was entitled to half the assets, and the house was a big one. I contacted my lawyer. When we divorced, the house was worth, with inequity. Now it was worth about $500,000, with $450,000 in equity. We only had $50,000 left on the mortgage. I wanted the money, obviously, and it would piss Kayla off. She loved that house and would hate giving me anything. It would also pay me back for all the maintenance and mortgage payments. A week later, Kayla called. "Tom, what's going on?" "Just working and fixing up my house. Surprised to hear from you." "You a hole. Why did a realtor come to my house for a listing contract?" "Since both our names are on the title, she needs your signature for the sale." "I'm not selling. I love this house." "Then when can I expect my check for half the equity?" "I got the house in the divorce." "No, you got to live there until Josh graduated. Now we either sell it and split the proceeds, or you buy out my half. I'm not giving you $100,000 for a house that's rightfully mine." "Good thing I'm not asking for $100,000. The equity is now. My half is. With the expensive furniture, let's round it to—" "You're insane. I'm not giving you a dime," she screamed and hung up. I laughed. A couple of months later, the judge ruled in my favor. She had to pay court fees and my lawyer. The house appraised for more than I estimated, and I ended up with. They bought me out with mostly Clarence's money, which would come back to bite him later. I fixed up my house nicely, including a shop. I bought a Chevy pickup in bad shape, interested only in the chassis. I stripped, cleaned, and repainted it. The rear differential was good, but I rebuilt it. The transmission was a Borg-Warner T manual 4-speed. For fun, I went. All out on the engine, a 427 big block. I found one online, had it shipped, and tore it apart. After machine work, I installed a new forged crankshaft, 10. 1 pistons, a heavy cam, and ported and polished heads with double springs. I added a blower, chrome valve covers, polished aluminum, and steel-braided hoses. The first drive was wild. I punched it on the freeway, and the back tires broke loose instantly. I barely managed to keep it straight. Lesson learned, press the accelerator slowly. I drove more carefully after that. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a public car show. Thinking it would be fun, I entered and paid the fee. On the day of the show, I drove my '72 Chevy to the park, checked in, and set up my spot next to a 1968 GTO. I noticed 2 attractive redheads. one about my age and the other a teenager, setting up behind the GTO. No guy was with them, and the older one had no ring on her left hand. "Good morning, I like your GTO," I said. "Thanks, I like your truck too," the older one replied. "This is my first show as a participant. I'm Tom." "I'm Marie, and this is my daughter Jenny. We've done this a few times." I invited them to join me in the shade. We hung out most of the day, chatting with other car enthusiasts. Though I didn't win any awards, I had a great time. Marie shared that she divorced her husband for cheating. She got the GTO in the divorce, using it as leverage to ensure he kept paying child support and maintenance. Jenny was friendly too, expressing anger at her dad for cheating. When the show ended, I invited them to dinner at Red Lobster, and they accepted. Over dinner, I shared my story. They were surprised my kids blamed me for the divorce after my ex cheated. "I'm so sorry, Tom. You seem like a nice guy and didn't deserve that," Marie said. We exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again. Jenny gave me a big smile, a wink, and a thumbs up, signaling her approval. Marie and I went out the next weekend for dinner and dancing. She gave me a kiss on the cheek, and I saw Jenny smiling and giving me another thumbs up. After a few more dates, I invited them over and cooked lasagna. They liked it and enjoyed my house, though Marie noted it needed a woman's touch. The next weekend, they invited me to their apartment. Marie's cooking was amazing, much better than mine. I couldn't stop eating and apologized for making a pig of myself, but they laughed, saying it was the best compliment for someone who loves to cook. 2 weekends later, Marie and I went out for dinner and dancing. During a slow song, she whispered, "Take me home." Surprised, I pulled back, but she giggled and clarified, "Take me to your home." "Oh, well then." Thankfully, I had my regular truck, not the... We ended up doing it 3 times before falling asleep. I cooked her breakfast and drove her home. A few months later, I proposed, and she said yes. We had a simple ceremony in front of a judge, and they moved into my house. Jenny even started calling me Daddy. Life was great. Yes, we had disagreements, and Jenny and I had our differences. She was still a teenager, and I was an authority figure, but she respected me, and her mom loved me as much as I loved her. About a year later, I got a surprise call from an unknown number. "Hello," I answered. "Dad?" An excited woman's voice said. "Carly?" "Yes, Daddy, it's me. I have great news." "Really? It's good to hear from you. I'm getting married." "That's great, sweetie. I'm so happy for you. I want you at my wedding." "Oh no, Clarence is paying for the wedding, and he will walk me down the aisle. You wouldn't sit in the front pew, but I really want you there." "Clarence? The man your mother cheated with?" "She married him." "Look, Dad, I'm trying to reconnect and want you at my wedding. It's your fault they got together after you left. You still think your mother did nothing wrong? I can't support this marriage. You'll likely cheat, just like your mom. Plus, you took the last honor of a father away from me. You've become a shallow, self-centered witch. Fine. Don't expect to see your grandchildren if you raise them like you. I don't want to. Mom's right, you are an a-hole." That was the last I heard from my daughter. She sent texts and voicemails, but I deleted them. Her olive branch was an insult. She made her choice 10 years ago. Any chance of a relationship with her or Josh was gone. It hurt, but they blame me for their mother's actions. I set my phone down and went to work on my 1963 Chevy pickup. This one would be less radical than the 72, with a slightly beefier 350 engine. I didn't notice Jenny pick up my phone or realize she was home. I was furious with my dad. I reached out and he talked to me like that. It was his fault our family was torn apart. I invited him to my wedding and he threw it back in my face. I wanted him to take responsibility for what he did to our family. My phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello, is this Carly Williams?" a voice asked. "Yes, can I help you?" I replied. "Yes, you can stop calling my daddy and being a witch. He is the best man I know, and doesn't deserve a brat like you reminding him of your pathetic family. You and your family are a waste of air." "Who the hell are you?" I demanded. "My name is Jenny Williams. I'm your sister. My mom married your dad, and he adopted me. I love him and would never disrespect him. You were an insult to daughters everywhere. I know what happened. Your mom disrespected her husband by going on a date and sleeping with another man, and you seem okay with that. My bio dad cheated on my mom, and she kicked him out without hesitation. If my mom ever cheated, I would help my dad throw her out. He is the most decent, caring person I know. I'm grateful your mom was stupid enough to let him go. You can tell your grandparents they have another granddaughter. But I don't want a relationship with people who reject their son for a cheating mom. When you say your vows, think about your husband cheating on you. Call me when it happens so I can laugh. Have a crappy life, sis." She hung up. I stared at the phone in shock. I couldn't believe Dad got married and didn't invite us. I now had a younger sister who sounded like me before Mom convinced Josh and me that Dad was breaking up the family over a minor issue. I thought he must have had a good reason. I even considered living with him, but Mom explained she just needed this one thing to rejuvenate herself, and Dad was the one being stubborn and leaving. Jenny was so rude and didn't care about our side. She called me names without knowing me. Of course Clarence would walk me down the aisle. He had been there for me. He was paying almost $20,000 for the wedding. I doubted Dad could contribute much. I was still upset when Mom and both grandmas came in from shopping. Mom noticed my mood. "Honey, what's wrong?" she asked. I told Dad about the wedding and invited him. I hoped it could help rebuild our relationship. "That's wonderful," Grandma Williams said. "Will he be there? We haven't heard from him since Thanksgiving a few years ago." I sighed. No, he got mad when I told him Clarence would walk me down the aisle and that it would be too awkward for him to sit with Mom and Clarence. Oh, that's too bad. I thought he would have gotten over his stubbornness by now. "That's not all. I found out I have a stepsister," I said. "What?" they exclaimed. A girl named Jenny Williams called after Dad hung up. Apparently, Dad married her mom and adopted her. She was very rude and said the nicest thing she wanted to thank my mom for being stupid or she wouldn't have such a great dad. I recounted both calls. They were shocked by the vehemence from Dad and Jenny. "Tom got married and we weren't invited?" Grandma Williams whispered. The day of my wedding finally arrived. I had a brief moment of sadness that my dad wouldn't be there, but I shrugged it off. I had reached out, and he had rejected me. This was a happy day, and I was marrying the man I loved. Clarence beamed as he took my arm, and we walked up the aisle. I was overjoyed, seeing all my friends and family. Josh was one of Bobby's groomsmen. Tears of joy filled my eyes as I saw Bobby smiling at me. Clarence lifted my veil, kissed my cheek, and said, "Congratulations, baby." He handed me to Bobby and the ceremony began. When the minister asked who gives this bride away, and Clarence said her mother and I do, something felt off, but I let it go. As I gazed into Bobby's eyes, repeating my vows, I couldn't say forsake all others. Images flashed through my mind of Bobby with another woman and him looking devastated as I confessed to cheating. "I understand now," I blurted out, feeling a sudden clarity wash over me. Bobby looked concerned. "What do you understand?" he asked, his brow furrowed with worry. "Absolutely everything," I replied with conviction. Then I got serious. "Bobby, do you really love me?" I asked, searching his eyes for the truth. "Of course I love you. Why are you asking?" he responded, his voice filled with confusion and concern. "Because I can't marry you today. We will get married, but not today." "I need to make things right," I explained, my voice trembling slightly. "Baby, what's wrong?" he asked, his concern deepening. "I love you, and I will marry you, but we need to fix things first." "We will reschedule the wedding," I said firmly, trying to reassure him. "You're not leaving me at the altar, are you?" he asked, his voice tinged with fear. "Not a chance." "You're coming with me," I replied, grabbing his hand. I turned to the guests. "I'm sorry, but I can't go through with this today. We will reschedule. In the meantime, please enjoy the reception. It's all paid for." "Clarence is footing the bill," I announced, my voice carrying through the crowd. I grabbed Bobby's hand and headed back down the aisle. My mother and Clarence blocked my exit. Clarence, furious about the money spent, Mom asked, "Carly, what are you doing?" Her voice sharp with confusion. "I'm fixing a mistake I made years ago," I answered, determined. "What mistake?" "The mistake of blaming my dad for the divorce when it was your fault for cheating," I said, my voice steady. "Carly, I am your mother. I'm not a strumpet, and you will respect me," she said, her tone defensive and stern. "Really, Mother? Once a cheater, always a cheater," I retorted, my anger rising. "Carly, how dare you?" she exclaimed, shocked by my accusation. "How dare me? I'm ashamed I ever looked up to you. It wasn't until I was saying my vows to Bobby that I realized how horrible you are. Once a cheater, always a cheater." Looking into his eyes, I understood how terrible it would be if he cheated on me, and how badly I would hurt him if I cheated. "Dad was a good role model, you weren't," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "What do you mean?" Mom asked, fear in her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "I mean you destroyed our family with your actions. You hurt Dad, and you hurt us, and now I see how wrong I was to side with you," I explained, my voice filled with the pain of realization. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "But you did, and now I need to make things right," I said, my voice strong and resolute. "Seriously, Mom, do you think I don't know about your workouts with Jim Davis at his apartment, or how Carlos, the pool boy, takes extra time because you're sleeping with him, or the landscape crew you sleep with after yard work? I have videos of that. And let's not forget the backroom heads you give Mario, your hairstylist. At least Clarence doesn't have to worry about you cheating with your boss. Oh, and Alan Morris, our neighbor, who visits when his wife has girls' night out." Her eyes darted to Clarence, who looked utterly shocked. I turned to him. Clarence, I vow with the same commitment my mom had to her vows that I'll pay you back for this wedding. Don't expect a dime. I pulled Bobby down the aisle, stopping to talk to the videographer who caught everything on camera. He gave me a copy, and I signed a release form for YouTube. Bobby and I dashed to the parking lot, got in his car, and roared out. Where are we going? He asked. West on. I'll put the address in Waze, I replied, finding the address quickly. It was about 2 hours away, and I hoped Dad was home. We didn't stop to change. I was on a mission and didn't want to waste time. It's not every day you open your door to see a bride and groom standing on your porch. I'm not a minister, and I don't live at a church, so it was quite a surprise. Even more surprising was recognizing one of them as my daughter, Carly, who had made it clear she never wanted to see me again. I knew today was her wedding day, so she should have been at the church, the reception, or on her honeymoon. Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute? She asked softly. Still stunned, I let them in and gestured to the living room where Marie and Jenny were sitting, both looking shocked. Carly, this is my wife, Marie, and our daughter, Jenny. Jenny, Marie, this is Carly. I don't know who the man with her is. Daddy, this is Bobby Jensen, my fiancé, Carly introduced. Didn't you get married a few hours ago? I asked, confused. I need to talk to you about that. I couldn't go through with it today. I can't get married unless my daddy walks me down the aisle. Daddy, I finally understand. You were right. Mom threw everything away, not you. I'm sorry for blaming you. You didn't deserve any of that. I hope you can forgive me and let me back into your life. I really want to marry Bobby, but I can't unless you agree to walk me down the aisle. This was unexpected. I was happy she wanted me back in her life, but curious about the scene. Carrie, did something happen at the wedding? You're still in your wedding dress and Bobby's in his tux. We were halfway through the ceremony when I had an epiphany, she said, handing me a CD. You should watch this while Bobby and I change into regular clothes. Marie showed Carly to a bedroom to change. I set up the video player in the living room. When Carly and Bobby were ready, we watched the video. It started as a typical wedding, but Carly stumbled during her vows. She did it. I can't believe it, Jenny whispered. Carly stopped the wedding and confronted her mom, revealing more of her infidelity. I was shocked. Carly explained. I couldn't go through with it. I realized how hurt Bobby would be if I did to him what Mom did to you. I finally understood what forsaking all others meant. Mom dishonored you, and I was dishonoring you by getting married without you there. The vows would be meaningless without the most honorable person I know. When I marry Bobby, it needs to be you who walks me down the aisle, not Mom and Clarence. Carly paused and smiled at Jenny. Besides, I need my little sister as a bridesmaid. Your words woke me up. How can I get married without you standing up there for me? This was a lot to process. We talked for hours. I didn't know Jenny had gotten Carly's number from my phone and called her. When it got late, I had them stay in the guest bedroom. Carly ignored calls from Clarence and Kayla, but took calls from friends. Some guests took her up on the offer to party on Clarence's dime. He tried to cancel but was too late, so he ended up drinking in a corner. Josh sent Carly a video of their mom trying to talk to Clarence, which ended in him yelling, "Cheating strumpet!" That relationship seemed over. Josh also managed to cancel the flight and resort reservations, but was stuck with a 20% cancellation fee. Since Carly and Bobby had already taken time off for their honeymoon, they stayed with us for the week. I reconnected with Carly and got to know Bobby, who turned out to be a great guy with strong morals. It was strained at first because of the lies my ex and kids had told him, but he warmed up to me after learning the truth and seeing my workshop. We set a new wedding date for the same venue a year later. This time, I would walk Carly down the aisle. Marie and Jenny were involved in the planning. Carly and Bobby updated everyone in the wedding party except Kayla and Clarence. Over the next few months, Carly and I rebuilt our relationship, and I got to know Bobby better. We attended car shows together, entering Marie's GTO, my 72 truck, Bobby's Challenger, and Jenny's 1974 Firebird. Carly and Bobby visited us often, and Josh even showed up a few times, though it was harder with him because he was closer to his mother. Meanwhile, things didn't go well for Kayla and Clarence. Clarence moved out and filed for divorce under irreconcilable differences to avoid a fight and the harsh penalties of the prenup. The prenup protected his pre-marriage assets, so Kayla only got to keep the house and about $50,000. Clarence couldn't prove he used his money to buy my share of the house, and his name wasn't on the title. He ended up paying off a business loan with nothing to show for it, and couldn't refile under infidelity in time. Word of Kayla's affairs spread, and her standing in the community took a significant hit. Her friends started avoiding her, and invitations to parties, charity events, and other gatherings dried up. Even worse for her since she didn't work and relied on Clarence's money. Her financial situation suffered greatly. Clarence learned an expensive lesson. He lost a couple of $1,000 buying out my half of the house, another $28,000 for the failed wedding, and had to pay Kayla $50,000 in the divorce. Then there was the humiliation. Kayla was angry that her affairs were publicly revealed and that Clarence was divorcing her in the manner he did. She started telling her remaining friends that she cheated on him because he had such a small instrument and didn't even know how to use it properly. That kind of gossip spreads quickly. Soon, every woman he tried to pick up in a bar would just laugh at him. He became somewhat of a recluse, only going to work and then straight home. His social life disappeared. "Ready, Daddy?" my oldest daughter asked. "No father is ever really ready to let go of their daughters, but I'm honored to do this for you," I replied. The doors opened, the music began, and filled the church. I stepped forward with my left foot, proudly walking my daughter down the aisle. I glanced around, and my smile grew bigger. My ex-wife was sitting in the 4th row. My wife, Marie, was in her place of honor in the 1st row. I would join her after I completed my last important duty for my daughter. "Who gives this woman to be wed?" the minister asked. "As her father, I give her to be wed," I spoke loudly. "Love you, Munchkin?" I whispered to her as I kissed her on the cheek before handing her off to Bobby. Yes, I neglected to mention my wife. No, it was not all my idea. Carly asked me to do it that way. I then turned and sat next to my wife. To have and to hold in sickness and in health, through good times and bad, forsaking all others. Carrie practically shouted the last part. Then, with a brilliant smile, she finished her vows. It was a beautiful ceremony. Cheers erupted as they kissed at the end. I looked down from the head table. Marie was right beside me. I saw Kayla sitting at a table off to the side. She didn't look happy. Every time she looked up and saw Marie sitting in her spot, she scowled. I noticed she was taking advantage of the open bar. Clarence had not been invited. I don't know if he would have come, even if he had been. My last great accomplishment for my daughter was complete. I walked her down the aisle, gave her away, gave a beautiful toast to the newlyweds, danced with my daughter in the father-daughter dance, then danced with my wife, while my daughter and her husband and his parents danced to the second song. My obligations were complete. I was sitting at the table beside my wife. My younger daughter was out dancing with one of the boys vying for her attention. "Pardon me, Marie, is it may I borrow your husband for this dance?" I heard a familiar voice behind me request from my wife. Marie and I turned around to face my ex-wife. Marie eyed her for a moment before responding, "Just make sure you return him to where you found him." She looked at me. "I trust you. It's her I don't trust to not try anything stupid." I led Kayla onto the floor. They started a slow song. It wouldn't have surprised me if she had requested it just for this purpose. I was careful to keep some distance and not pull her in tight. We danced for a bit before she started talking. "You were supposed to give me that one night. We should have moved past that and gone on like normal. This was supposed to be the two of us together today. And you were not supposed to have gone out that night. You should have known me better than to think that I would have been okay with you cheating on me, no matter how many times you did it. I didn't cheat. I told you about it before I did it. I didn't sneak around behind your back. Whether you told me or not is irrelevant. The fact that you had lovemaking with someone else is cheating. Besides, I never gave you permission. I told you not to do it, but you did it anyway. I never wanted this. I just wanted that one night, then we could have been together forever. You know you are the only man I have ever loved. I never had any love for him. Besides, the lovemaking wasn't even that good. He was selfish, and he wasn't even as big as you are. Then why did you marry him? Because you divorced me. Sure, I didn't love him, but I liked him. After you left, I didn't want to be alone. I thought that I might grow to love him, but I could never get over you. I did all that to you because I was pissed that you left me. I still loved you, but you wouldn't even talk to me after that one night I realized that you were everything I would ever need, and I would never go out with another man again. So why did you cheat on him then? Because he was terrible in bed. I thought I could train him, but he refused to take any advice. He would just stick it in, pump for a few minutes, finish, then roll over and fall asleep. When I couldn't take it anymore, I found a couple of other guys who could actually satisfy me. I had no idea Carly knew anything about it. Even if I did, I never would have guessed she would betray me like that. I'm sorry for you. We had a great marriage, but you threw it away for one night of mediocre lovemaking. I don't suppose there's any chance. I couldn't help laughing. Not just no, but hell no. First off, even if I wasn't married now, what you did in turning my kids against me eliminated any chance of us ever getting back together. Now I'm married again to a woman I love, and I have another daughter that I love as well. The best I can offer is civility when we are at the same place and at events with our children and grandchildren. Thankfully, the song ended shortly after. I didn't talk to her again that night. She couldn't afford the mortgage payments on the house, so she ended up selling it and moving into a small apartment. She got enough money out of the house to live on if she was careful. She went out with her friends occasionally, but as far as I know, she never had another relationship. Clarence ended up living alone as well. Carly and Bobby had a long, loving marriage. They had 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. Josh eventually married a sweet girl too. They had 2 daughters. As far as I know, neither one cheated on the other. Some believe I should have sought revenge on Kayla and Clarence. The reality is, there was nothing I could do to hurt them without either going to jail or having it backfire on me. I decided to move ahead and live my life as best as I could. There's a saying, the best revenge is a life well lived. I did that and let karma handle the rest. Karma is a cow, and her dance name is Vengeance. Clarence and Kayla were not burned, but they did not escape unscathed. No, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I still feel good about myself. I have my wife, my daughter, and my 2 other children back in my life. I am surrounded by people who love me. I have a good life. Ready, Daddy? My daughter asked. No father is ever really ready to let go of their daughters, but I'm honored to do this for you, I replied. The doors opened, the music began, and filled the church. I stepped forward with my left foot, proudly walking my daughter down the aisle. My wife was in her place of honor in the first row, smiling broadly. I would join her after I took care of my last important duty for my daughter. Don't worry, Daddy. I'm going through with this today. I talked to Carly, and I'm doing it right the first time, Jenny assured me.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Most men discover their wife's infidelity by coming home at an unexpected time, overhearing a suspicious conversation, or stumbling upon incriminating evidence like misplaced undergarments. My revelation came in a different form, an email from my wife. To be fair, Maria didn't send it to me on purpose, although some might argue her subconscious had a hand in it. Most likely, her email program suggested my name as the recipient, and she clicked without double-checking. Mistakes like that are easy when you're in a rush. Regardless of how it happened, I was taken aback when I received a message from Maria, my wife of 18 years, titled about yesterday. Since Wednesday had been an entirely routine day, I couldn't imagine what warranted an email. When I opened it, I read the following. Darling, I just had to tell you again how wonderful yesterday afternoon was. You made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. I can't wait until next week. Your sexy lady. I'd been at work all day Wednesday, and as far as I knew, so had Maria. We hadn't even spoken that afternoon, though I did remember her being unusually cheerful when she got home that evening. Moreover, sexy lady was certainly not one of the nicknames I use for her. The ugly conclusion I jumped to felt unavoidable. My immediate instinct was to confront Maria that very evening, demanding an explanation or, more likely, a confession. But I am a logical and methodical person, and it didn't take much to imagine how such a confrontation might play out. She could deny the implications of the email, concoct a plausible story, or dismiss the whole thing as a poorly executed joke. What would I say then? Worse, a baseless accusation would only put her on guard, eliminating any chance I had of uncovering the truth. After careful thought, I decided to adopt a wait-and-see approach. For one, I wanted to see if Maria would realize her mistake and offer an explanation of her own. If she didn't, the email had already alerted me and provided a timeline for her next rendezvous. That was valuable information, and I intended to use it wisely. Maria works in real estate, so her schedule is often unpredictable. That evening, she arrived home later than I did. I watched her closely, studying her every move, but she appeared entirely normal. If she had noticed her error and was aware I'd read the email, she didn't let it show. Meanwhile, I acted as though everything was fine, offering no indication that anything was out of the ordinary. The evening passed uneventfully, but when we went to bed, I found myself lying awake, unable to quiet my thoughts. Instead, I lay there wrestling with my problem, looking at it from every angle to see if I could unravel the knot. One possibility, of course, remained that there was a completely innocent explanation. If this were so, I would not only make a fool of myself by acting rashly, but I might even do harm to our marriage. I loved my wife, and the last thing I wished was to do something that might drive her away from me. Alternatively, if the email was indeed the smoking gun that revealed an affair in progress, then my marriage was already in jeopardy, in which case I would have to take action. Just because I try to control my emotions doesn't mean I don't have them. As I tossed and turned in my bed, the pain of my wife's possible betrayal ate deep into me. After lengthy consideration, I concluded that my only option was to put the issue aside until I could obtain more definitive information. Fortunately, that's something I'm able to do, and once I reached that conclusion I soon drifted off to sleep. Once I got to work the next morning, I mentally reopened the issue. In the light of a new day, I realized that the coming Wednesday should provide some answers. Accordingly, I contacted a detective agency and made arrangements to have my wife followed. If she did nothing out of the ordinary on Wednesday, that wouldn't absolutely ease my fears, but I would certainly feel better. However, if she engaged in unfaithful behavior, at least I would know the truth and could begin to take appropriate action. Having done all I could do at that point allowed me to set the whole matter aside and go back to my work without distraction. From all outward appearances, the following Wednesday was exactly like any other. Maria and I left for work as usual and returned home late that afternoon at almost identical times. There was nothing about her appearance or behavior that struck me as abnormal or unusual. On Thursday morning, I had an appointment with the detective agency to learn the outcome of their surveillance. While I am not a very emotional person, I can still read emotions in others. When I walked into the office, the detective handling my case avoided making eye contact with me. I knew immediately that I would not like what he was about to tell me. It was as bad as I had feared. Early in the afternoon, my wife had left the real estate office where she works, and the detective had followed her to a cut-rate motel near the airport. He handed me pictures showing her meeting a man there and entering a room with him. The timestamp on the photo read 1:52 p.m., approximately 2 hours later. Another photograph showed the two of them leaving the room together arm in arm. "I'm sorry," the detective said to me. "We always hate to be the ones to confirm your suspicions. What would you like us to do for you now?" I thought about it for a minute. "I need your help one more time." It would appear that this motel is the scene of their regular assignations. If that's true, is there any way you could arrange to get photos of what happens inside the room? The detective didn't hesitate. "We have a lot of experience obtaining such evidence. There will likely be an additional charge for ensuring the cooperation of the manager of the motel, but if that's acceptable to you, I think we can guarantee satisfaction." I nodded. The cost would be cheap in exchange for the proof. I returned to my office, but this time found to my surprise that I was unable to concentrate on my work. Now that all doubt had been removed, my ability to compartmentalize my thoughts seemed to have vanished. Finally, I gave up trying to work and began to focus on what I had learned. Wiping my eyes, I began to make plans. In addition to the confirmation of my wife's infidelity, I felt I had also discovered why Maria had happened to send the telltale email to me instead of him. It turned out that I knew her lover. He was our neighbor, Alistair Bradshaw. Since my name is Mac Bishop, the email program must have suggested my name after Maria had typed in the first two letters. Very careless of her not to double-check, I thought, but I suppose lust has a way of distracting lovers. Knowing the identity of Maria's lover further increased my sense of betrayal. Alistair and his wife Bobby were friends of ours. We'd often dined at each other's homes or gone out to movies together, and I'd never noticed any special spark between Maria and Alistair. Had I been blind? Or had the two of them practiced the art of deception well? Whatever the case, I knew that I had to do something. The question was what? For several hours, I mentally flitted among numerous courses of action. At times, fantasies of revenge played through my mind, only to be followed by scenarios in which I imagined myself pleading with Maria not to leave. Questions about why the affair started and how long it had been going on plagued me. Anger and self-pity danced with one another in my thoughts. Finally, I came to a conclusion. I not only knew what I wanted to accomplish, but I had a pretty well-developed plan for achieving my goals. My campaign would involve two separate courses of action that would take place simultaneously. I thought of them as divide and conquer. Divide the two lovers and conquer her heart again. For the divide part of my plan, I would use my knowledge of Maria and, to a lesser extent, Alistair to drive a wedge between the two of them. With any luck, I could thwart their relationship until they decided to call it quits on their own. The second part would involve an all-out campaign to win back Maria's affection by becoming the perfect husband. At the same time that I was showing her the downside of her relationship with Alistair, I hoped to show her the benefits of resuming her relationship with me. I made extensive notes for myself, listing possible actions for each part of my campaign, marrying their timing and working through the interdependencies so that each would complement the other. When I had finished, I saw that the essential element for both was the need to pretend total ignorance of their relationship and to keep them unaware of my knowledge. Obviously, this would require a lot of restraint on my part, but I felt that I could do this. I'm good at not showing emotion. I decided not to initiate my campaign until after the next report from the detective agency. But there were steps I could take in the interim to prepare. First, I purchased a recording system for our home phones, along with a voice-activated recording device which I concealed in Maria's car. Tapping our home phone covered that same area of communication, and while I couldn't tap her cell phone, I felt that the car was the most likely place for her to make cell phone calls to Alistair. I didn't worry about her calling him from work. The agency had an open plan office, so I reasoned that she wouldn't be likely to hold a conversation with her lover in a place where she could so easily be overheard. My next step was to make changes to Maria's email. Her home computer was already set up to access her work email account. She'd password-protected her system, but I knew where she kept a list of her passwords, and it didn't take me long to gain access. I quickly arranged for a copy of any messages she sent or received to be forwarded automatically to my account. Once I had access to her email, I soon learned that their affair had apparently been going on only a month or so. That suggested they were still in the honeymoon stage of their relationship. My challenge was to engineer an early end to the honeymoon. Having completed the preliminary work, all I had to do was wait until the detective agency produced photographs of their next liaison. In addition to stills, they surprised me by delivering video and audio as well. It wasn't a pleasant surprise. I had steeled myself to see them having sex. What I had not expected were the displays of affection and, dare I say it, love between them. The depth of their intimacy cut deep. It made me wonder if my plan had any real chance to succeed. But I finally decided I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so I recommitted myself to the course of action I had maried. My wife is not a patient person, and she doesn't handle disappointment well. I hoped to use that weakness against her to disturb the relationship she had developed with Alistair. At the same time, she is very much a romantic, and I felt that might be the path for the other part of my plan. Having a copy of all her emails gave me a decided advantage when it came to marrying my program of interference. Their next exchange gave me everything I needed to commence the divide part of my plan. Maria, are we still on for Wednesday? Alistair, absolutely. Same time, same place. Can't wait. On the day of their next rendezvous, I took a late lunch and drove over to Maria's office, parking around the corner out of sight. Once she returned from lunch and gone inside, I casually strolled past her parking lot, took one more look around to be sure the coast was clear, then ducked down beside her car. It took me only a minute to unscrew the valve cap on a tire and let the air out. Then I returned to my car and drove back to my office. Without a membership in AAA and no men in her office, I wondered what she'd do. Sure enough, 20 minutes before she was supposed to meet Alistair at the motel, I got a frantic call from Maria. Mac, I have a flat tire, and I'm supposed to be at a showing in a little while. Can you help me? Don't worry about a thing, babe, I told her reassuringly. Work is pretty light today, so I can fix it for you. I just have to wrap up one thing here, and then I'll be right over. Of course, I waited for another 15 minutes before leaving, which meant I didn't get to her agency until nearly the appointed time for Maria's get-together with Alistair. I found her waiting impatiently beside her car. I'm sorry to be so late, babe, I apologized. That took longer than I expected. As she paced back and forth in frustration, I slowly and methodically changed her tire. I had parked my car directly behind hers so I could load her flat tire in my trunk and take it to get repaired. Of course, that also prevented her from leaving until I was good and ready. By the time I had put on the spare, gotten the flat tire into my car, and had come back from washing my hands, it was well over an hour after the time she was supposed to meet Alistair. I apologized to her again for taking so long, and told her I hoped this wouldn't affect her relationship with her client. He'll just have to understand, she said resignedly. Sometimes these things happen. While I was changing her tire, I had heard her cell phone go off several times, but although she checked it, she never answered. My guess was that she saw it was Alistair calling and didn't want to speak to him in front of me. My suspicion was subsequently confirmed when I got back to my office and saw the anxious email between the two of them. Alistair, where are you? I waited at the motel for over an hour. Maria, arg, had a flat tire. Alistair, you could have at least called to let me know. I rented a room for nothing. Maria, Mac was here changing the tire. Couldn't talk to you in front of him. Good, I thought. It looks like I've introduced a little tension into their plans. That night after dinner, I made a point of ushering Maria to the sofa, where I proceeded to place her feet in my lap and give her a foot massage. She looked at me quizzically because she usually has to ask for such treatment. I know you had a frustrating day, babe, and I just wanted to do something nice for you, I told her. She looked at me to see if I was implying anything more, but when I continued to smile and work on her feet, she relaxed onto the sofa. Soon I saw a look of pleasure cross her face, and as I continued massaging, her little groans of pleasure were sweet music to my ears. Not wanting to be too obvious, I waited the rest of the week before my next action. Then on Monday, I had a large floral arrangement delivered to her office with a card that read, "To the best wife a man could have, If she felt any twinge of conscience at the irony of my card, she concealed it well. But she did thank me profusely when she got home that night and told me how impressed the other women in the office had been. "But what's the occasion?" she asked. "You never did anything like that before." "That's exactly right, sweetheart," I told her, taking her in my arms, "and that's something I want to change. What if you'd had that flat tire while you were driving on the highway? That made me think how precious your love is to me, and I wanted to be sure you knew it." She looked at me searchingly, but after a moment's hesitation, she threw her arms around me and hugged me tightly. "That's so sweet of you, honey. That really means a lot to me." I couldn't help wondering if she was feeling any guilt. My continuing surveillance of her email again paid off again when I learned that the lovers maried to make up for lost time at a special get-together in a few days. I wanted to disrupt their plans, but this time I felt that it might be suspicious if I tampered with Maria's car again. Accordingly, I let her go off to her rendezvous without interference. However, I made it a point to follow, staying well back to avoid being spotted. While she was entering the room Alistair had reserved, I pulled around in back of the motel and entered through a side door. The motel was downscale enough that there were no security cameras to record my pulling the fire alarm in the corridor. I had already driven off before the fire department arrived, but I waited down the street long enough to watch the guests being herded to safety out in the parking lot. I didn't spot Maria and Alistair, but I knew they had to be in the throng, probably mad as wet hens. Back at the safety of my office, I watched with glee as the emails flew between the two frustrated lovers. Maria, "What the hell? I'm so mad I could scream." Alistair, "I'm sorry, but it wasn't my fault." Maria, "Next time, book someplace that's not a fire trap." That's my Maria, I thought to myself. When she got home from work, I could see that she was still seething. But that changed to surprise when she noticed that the dinner table was set with linen napkins and our fine china. And when she smelled her favorite dish simmering on the stove, she looked at me with mock disbelief. "Who are you, and what have you done with my husband?" she asked with a big smile on her face. "It's nothing," I said modestly. "I called your office about something this afternoon, and when they told me you had an afternoon meeting with a client that ran late, I figured the last thing you'd want to do would be to come home and cook." I saw a fleeting look of fear pass over her face, but she recovered well and threw her arms around my neck. "That is so thoughtful of you, honey," she said. "You treat me so well." After dinner, I made a big point of refusing to let her help with the dishes. She gave me a look of gratitude as I ushered her to the den and turned on her favorite TV program. I felt her eyes follow me as I returned to the kitchen, and I decided that the conquer part of my campaign was moving ahead nicely. Whatever reservations Maria might be beginning to have about her affair, the next email I intercepted to her from Alistair made clear that he was not to be deterred by any temporary setbacks. Alistair, "Okay, no more cut-rate motels, sexy lady. This time I've booked a room at the Hyatt. Finally, we can spend some quality time together." Maria, "That sounds much better. See you there at the regular time." As I read their email exchange, I cursed Alistair's persistence and rued Maria's willingness to continue with their interlude. This would call for different measures. I waited until the afternoon of the day before they were to meet, then called the Hyatt's reservation desk. "This is Alistair Bradshaw. I have a reservation for a room for tomorrow, but something came up and I won't be able to make it after all. I'm afraid I'll have to cancel the reservation." "No problem, sir," the reservation clerk replied. "In fact, we have a big convention booked, and your cancellation will really help us." I smiled in satisfaction. Even though I tossed a monkey wrench in the works, I couldn't resist showing up at the Hyatt just to watch what would happen. I found a chair with a view of the reception desk and used a newspaper to hide myself. Sure enough, right on time the adulterous duo made an appearance, walking hand in hand, chatting and cooing like lovebirds. Their amorous mood didn't last long once they learned they didn't have a room. "But I made that reservation days ago," Alistair yelled at the hapless clerk. "I'm terribly sorry," the poor girl apologized, "but according to my screen your reservation was canceled." "That's ridiculous," Alistair huffed. "Very well, make us another reservation." The girl shook her head sadly. "I'm sorry, sir, but the hotel is completely booked up. And unfortunately, with the convention in town, most of the other major hotels are also sold out. But you might have some luck at one of the smaller motels near the airport." When Maria heard the last comment, her face turned red and she clenched her fists. As Alistair continued to fulminate against the clerk and the hotel, she yanked angrily on his sleeve. "Never mind," she said in a loud hiss. "Let's get out of here. I'm not in the mood anyway." With that she turned and stalked off for the parking lot, with Alistair behind her trying to placate her and tossing out alternatives. It was clear that he wasn't having much luck. I waited until they had both driven away in their cars before leaving my post in the lobby. My work here is done, I thought gleefully. When Maria got home that night, I stopped her at the door. Don't even bother to come in the house. We're going out. Before she could object, I took her arm and escorted her out to my car. After holding the door for her, I went around to my side and began to drive. What is all this? She asked. Where are we going? I thought you might enjoy a little surprise tonight, I told her with a smile. With that, I turned on the car radio to some soft mood music and proceeded to drive in silence. She watched me curiously, trying to guess what I had in store for her. She became obviously uneasy when she saw me pull into the parking lot of the Hyatt. Why are we coming here? She asked nervously. You'll see, I told her with a wink. Once inside the hotel elevator, I pushed the button for the top floor, and we soon emerged into the Hyatt's rooftop restaurant in their signature rotating dome. When I reached the maitre d' station and gave him my name, he checked his reservation list. Ah, there you are, right on time, he said. With that, he led us to a table on the outer rim where we could look out over the lights of the city. Why did you pick this place? Maria asked suspiciously. No special reason, I told her untruthfully. I just thought it would make a pretty setting for my pretty wife. She smiled tensely at my compliment. But how did you manage to get a table for us? I heard there was a big convention in town. Oh, that was no problem, I said carelessly. I just called today for a reservation. Maria didn't react to my comment, but I knew my success stood in sharp counterpoint to Alistair's fiasco this afternoon. Actually, I had made my reservation as soon as I learned of their plans for a rendezvous. I've taken the liberty of ordering for you, I continued. I hope you don't mind. She told me she was grateful for my thoughtfulness and began to relax. She was even more gratified when the waiter brought out an ice bucket holding a bottle of champagne. After we drank several toasts that I made to her, she got really relaxed. And when the server brought out oysters on the half shell for the next course, she was delighted. I'm not a big fan of oysters, but Maria loves them. For the main course, the waiter brought out a salmon niçoise salad with black olive vinaigrette dressing. Maria was suitably impressed. I would have guessed you'd order something heavy, like a big steak, she said with a smile. This is perfect. I know you like salads, babe, I told her. Besides, we don't want to get too full. She looked at me inquiringly, but I said nothing more. For dessert, the waiter brought out 2 bowls of fresh raspberries with a dollop of whipped cream on top, accompanied by liqueur glasses filled with Grand Marnier. It was the perfect ending, and Maria loved it all. As we drove home, Maria released her seatbelt and snuggled up against me. It appeared that the alcohol and the oysters were having the desired effect. Besides, I felt that she had to be frustrated and horny after the failures of her most recent trysts. When we got home, I steered her straight up the stairs to our bedroom. Why don't you slip into your nightgown, I suggested, while I attend to other matters. When she turned toward her closet, I darted down the hall to the guest bedroom to make sure everything was ready. When I returned, I was pleased to see that she had chosen a sheer black gown that simultaneously hid and revealed the curves of her body. I led her down the hall to the guest bedroom, which was now glowing with scented candles placed strategically around the turned-down bed. As she stood gazing in wonder at my arrangements, I came up behind her and slipped a sleep mask over her eyes. Touch and smell will be the only senses you'll need tonight, I told her as I led her over to the bed and slipped off her gown. Then I stretched her out on the fresh linen sheet. Smell this, I said, waving a bottle of almond-scented oil under her nose. Then I poured a small quantity into my hands to warm it and began to rub it onto her feet. She groaned with pleasure as I gave her an abbreviated foot massage, which further moved up to her entire body and ended with me getting intimate with her. Rousing myself, I pulled the sleep mask off of her face. Her eyes were closed. She had either passed out or collapsed from exhaustion. Taking a deep breath, I picked her up, carried her back to our bedroom, and placed her on our bed. Then I covered her with the sheet, and she quickly dropped off to sleep. I gave myself a quick sponge bath in the sink before returning to the bed. As I fell asleep, I was quite pleased at the way the evening had gone. Normally, Maria and I are on different schedules when we get up for work, but the next morning she made a special point of rising early. When I went downstairs, I found that she had already made coffee and fixed breakfast for me. When I looked at her, her eyes were sparkling. Thank you, baby. Last night was really something special for me, she told me fervently. I'm so glad you liked it, I replied. I know I'll remember that for a long, long time. She beamed at me. I felt that I was making real progress with Maria, but later that day I intercepted an email exchange that let me know Alistair was still trying to get together with her. Alistair, I'm so sorry for what happened at the Hyatt yesterday. I still don't know how they managed to lose my reservation. Maria. I don't know, Alistair. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. Alistair. Don't say that, sexy lady. Let me make it up to you. Is there any chance you could get away on Saturday? Bobby is going out of town, and we could spend the day at our lake house. No reservation mix-ups, no fire alarms, just some hot loving. Maria. Mac always plays golf on Saturday. I could probably get away while he's on the course. Alistair. Perfect. I can't wait to get my hands on your hot body again. It was clear to me that my campaign was at a tipping point. I felt that both Divide and Conquer were making inroads, but I needed to do something this weekend or I stood to lose all the progress I'd made so far. Their new plans posed a real problem for me. Canceling my golf game wouldn't work. Maria could always pretend to go shopping or find some other excuse to get away. I dared not tamper with her car again. Everything might be lost if she became suspicious of me. And unlike with the motel and hotel, there was no easy way I could play games with Alistair's lake house. What I needed was some way to make Maria decide to change her plans, preferably at the last minute. Suddenly, I had a stroke of genius, the perfect solution. Even better, the preparations took only a single phone call. I followed my regular routine for the rest of the week, but on Friday night, I found the opportunity to grab Maria's cell phone and swap out her battery for a dead one I'd kept. If she tried to call Alistair this weekend, I wanted her to use our home phone so I'd get to hear the conversation. Most weekends, Maria and I dressed pretty casually. But when Maria came downstairs Saturday morning, I was interested to note that she had put on an attractive skirt and blouse. Idly, I wondered what type of underwear she might be wearing underneath. As the time grew near for me to leave for the golf course, I noticed Maria watching me somewhat apprehensively, probably because I had made no move to put on my usual golf slacks and shirt. When it was almost time for my regular 10 a.m. tea time, and I had made no move to leave, I could almost see the wheels turning in her head as she began preparing an excuse for why she would need to leave the house. Finally, she grew so impatient that she confronted me. "Aren't you playing golf today?" she demanded. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Maria gave me a puzzled look and went to see who was there. When she opened the door, she burst out in astonishment. "Miriam, what are you doing here? Is that any way to greet your little sister?" Miriam asked as she came through the door. The two women hugged each other excitedly. "Of course I'm glad to see you," Maria bubbled. "It's just that I wasn't expecting you." Miriam smiled over at me. "I'm here because your wonderful husband invited me. He called me earlier this week to let me know you two didn't have any plans and to suggest that I spend the weekend. It's been so long since we've gotten together that I jumped at the chance." Maria and Miriam were extremely close to one another. Scarcely a week went by that they weren't on the phone together. But because Miriam lived a couple of 100 miles away, the two didn't get to visit very often. "It's wonderful to have you here," Maria told her. Then she turned to me. "That really was a thoughtful thing to do, Mac. Now I know why you gave up your golf game." "Well, nothing's more important than giving my wife and her sister a chance to spend some time together," I told them. "Now, ladies, I want you to get ready because I'm taking you out to brunch." Then I looked at them again. "Actually, Miriam, you may want to change into something dressier than your jeans. But, babe, you look perfect just the way you're dressed now." Maria looked down at herself and blushed as she remembered why she had dressed that way. But she recovered nicely. "Why don't you help Miriam take her bag up to the guest room? While she's changing, I'm just going to make a quick phone call." I watched her walk down the hall, only to hear muted cursing a minute later. She walked back out holding her unresponsive cell phone. "The damn battery has gone dead," she said angrily. "Oh, dear, that's too bad." I sympathized. "But you can use our home phone," I said, pointing to the wall unit in the kitchen. "Never mind," she said hastily. "The call wasn't that important anyway. Now, where are we going to brunch?" I spent the rest of the weekend doing one activity after another with the two sisters, trying to ensure that they had a great time. I know that when Miriam was preparing to leave Sunday afternoon, she made a special point of giving me a big hug and thanking me. "You've got a special one here," she told Maria. "Make sure you take good care of him." I thought I saw Maria wince slightly before she smiled and put her arm around me. "I will," she promised. I was pretty sure that Maria would find time during the weekend to call Alistair, but I wasn't worried. If the call was made on our home phone, I'd have a recording of it. After Maria went to bed Sunday night, I was able to check the recording device. Sure enough, it had captured a call she made to him early Sunday morning. "Maria. Alistair. It's me, Maria. Alistair. Where the hell have you been? You didn't show up on Saturday, and every time I tried to call you, your cell phone went straight to voicemail." "Maria. I'm so sorry, but I couldn't help it. My sister came into town unexpectedly on Saturday morning, and then my phone battery went dead. I couldn't find a chance to call you in private before now. Alistair, couldn't you have gotten away Saturday afternoon? Maria, I couldn't, Alistair. Mac took us all over town doing things Saturday. Alistair, well, what about today? Maria, my sister's here for the weekend. I just can't walk out on her. I haven't seen her in months. Alistair, well, I felt pretty damned silly sitting at the lake house with my tool in my hand all day, waiting on you. Maria, don't you ever think about anything except your tool? Alistair, fine. I guess I know where I stand in importance to you. Maria, let's not fight about this. Listen, I have to go. I don't want Mac walking in on me. Their conversation delighted me. It sounded like their frustrations were about to boil over, and I felt that I had dealt their relationship a serious blow. I could only hope that it was enough. Eavesdropping on their email on Monday, I found confirmation of my assessment. Alistair, are we still going to get together this week? Maria, I don't think so, Alistair. This whole thing is getting to be too much of a hassle, and it's starting to get to me. Besides, Mac has been really sweet to me lately, and I'm feeling pretty guilty about running around behind his back. I think we need to end this now. Alistair, don't say that, Maria. At least one more time. Maria, no, I mean it, it's over. Alistair, well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. You're still one sexy lady, but I understand what you're saying. Maybe it's for the best. I don't want to lose Bobby either, but I hope we can still be friends. Maria, sure. We'll stay friends, just not friends with benefits. Success. I had managed to insert enough problems into their relationship to cause it to collapse, just as I'd hoped. Now the only thing left for me was to complete the second half of my plan. When Maria got home that evening, she was moody and distracted. Once or twice I even thought I saw tears in her eyes. I didn't want to intrude, but I felt I shouldn't ignore her behavior entirely. Are you okay, babe? I asked solicitously. You seem to be sort of down tonight. Did you have a problem at work? Oh, it's nothing, she said, not looking at me. I guess I'm just in a blue mood. It's probably hormones or something like that. I nodded and gave her some space for the rest of the evening. But inwardly I was gloating because I was certain she was mourning the end of her relationship with Alistair. Even though it had been her decision to halt the affair, I knew that Maria invests a lot of emotions in any relationship and can't let one go without some sense of loss. I actually found her mood reassuring. She wouldn't have felt so blue if she hadn't decided to end things. But I couldn't help thinking that Alistair was unlikely to have a similar reaction. He's probably banging Bobby this very moment, I thought snidely. The next morning, Maria was in a much better emotional state. During the day, I saw no further emails between Alistair and her, which reinforced my belief that neither was having second thoughts. That gave me a growing sense of triumph. Everything was turning out as I had planned. That evening after dinner, Maria came in the den. Are you busy? She asked. Not really, I told her. Then she snuggled up beside me. Can I interrupt you for a minute? I just wanted you to know what a wonderful husband you are to me, she said earnestly, gazing into my eyes. The last few weeks you've been so sweet to me, and I feel really lucky to have you. My heart soared at those words, and I knew that I had won. This was the moment I had waited for. I returned her gaze but said nothing, waiting to see what else she might say. She paused, and for just a moment I saw an expression that might have been guilt pass over her face. Her eyes seemed to water a bit. I really don't deserve you, she said fervently. No, I said calmly, I don't deserve you. Then I reached over to the desk drawer. And I certainly didn't deserve this, I said harshly, plopping into her lap the still photos of her session with Alistair at the motel. At first she looked at me in confusion because of the change in my tone of voice, and then she had trouble comprehending what I had given her. But when she focused on the stills and recognized what they depicted, she began to wail, "Oh my God. No. I reached back again and handed her a copy of the divorce petition that my attorney had filed earlier in the day. When she realized what I had given her, she gasped. But I thought you and I mean, isn't there some way? Coldly I interrupted her, handing her another set of papers. And in case you're wondering about Alistair, here's a copy of the email I sent to Bobby this evening with a copy of the detective's report attached. Underneath that, you'll find a similar email I sent to your sister Miriam explaining why I'm divorcing you. She let out a wail of anguish and dissolved into fresh sobs. I just don't understand, she choked out. You've been so kind and loving these past few weeks. How could you do something so cruel now? Didn't any of it mean anything to you? I looked at her calmly and replied, My dear, the moment you chose to start your sordid little affair, you destroyed all the love I had for you. These past weeks weren't about reconciliation. They were about ending your relationship with Alistair. As for my behavior toward you, I wanted you to fully grasp how much you were losing when you betrayed me. My goal was to take from you the very things you took from me, and from where I stand, I'd say my plan worked perfectly. Maria collapsed onto the sofa, her sobs echoing through the room. I turned away, walked out for the last time. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
My wife cheated on me, and it devastated my life, but I found a new path and got the best revenge. I stepped outside, holding a leash, ready to take my dog for a walk and enjoy a short run. As I observed my neighbors starting their cars and heading to work, I let out a deep sigh, realizing I had no office or workplace to rush to anymore. Following my business's bankruptcy, I was stuck with a huge pile of debt, and I'd be spending another day at home trying to revive my once thriving business, which had met with nothing but failure. The weight of these setbacks left me feeling lost in a world that continued moving forward without me. I noticed my neighbor, James, walking over from his well-maintained driveway. James ran a successful car import business and often had different luxury cars parked outside his house. Today was no exception, and James walked confidently with a big grin. James greeted me cheerfully, almost too cheerful. I responded with a forced smile, even though I noticed his grin seemed to grow wider. I remarked on another day of relaxation for him, though his comments stung. I calmly mentioned that every day brings its own challenges. James just chuckled and said he had cars to import, then strolled away. I watched him go, reminding myself not to let his insensitive remarks affect me. I knew some people couldn't resist the urge to gloat. Returning home used to bring me great comfort, but now it felt like stepping into a storm, not because of the walls or the furniture, but because of someone who lived there, my wife, Nicole. Nicole, who worked as an insurance agent, had grown distant and cold since my financial troubles began. The difference was stark. Gone were the days when she would excitedly call me to come home early for a romantic dinner or snuggle on the couch for a movie. Our conversations, once warm and affectionate, had become brief and mechanical. The home that had once been a sanctuary of love now felt like a reminder of what we had lost. I attempted to bridge the growing gap between us by mentioning the times when Nicole used to check on me during the day. Nicole responded curtly, without looking up from her papers, indicating that things change. One evening, after returning from work, I gathered the courage to approach Nicole, driven by my longing to rekindle the closeness we had once shared. I softly brought up our first anniversary, recalling the candlelight dinner on the terrace and our dance under the stars. Nicole looked up from her laptop with an unreadable expression and inquired about the purpose of my remarks. I confess, I said, I miss us. I miss how things used to be. She audibly sighed, closed her laptop, and explained that she didn't have time for this at the moment, as she was swamped with work. She emphasized that being at home didn't grant her the luxury to sit around and reminisce. I felt a sharp sense of rejection and expressed my desire to spend time together as we used to. Nicole's eyes hardened as she mentioned the times had changed, highlighting her responsibilities while I pursued my activities. She indicated that she didn't have time for sweet talk and suggested that we could discuss things when she wasn't buried with work. I nodded, feeling the weight of the distance between us. All right, Nicole, whenever you're ready. As I walked away, the cold silence of our home felt more pronounced than ever. While walking through the park with my dog, a newfound optimism began to well up within me. Despite the failure of my business, I realized it was just one obstacle in the grand scheme of life. I whispered to myself, patting my dog, "It's just another challenge. I can and will rise again." Upon returning home from the dog walk, I noticed Nicole at the dressing table, gracefully applying lipstick and makeup. Her reflection caught my eyes, evoking memories of the early days of our love. I approached her with a gentle smile and complimented her beauty. Nicole didn't even glance at me. She continued applying her makeup. A moment later, when she was finished, she looked at her own reflection and smiled, remarking, "I am beautiful." In an effort to bridge the gap between us, I casually inquired about her work schedule for the evening. She paused, eyeing me curiously. "Around 7, I think. Why?" I winked and replied, "Oh, no reason, just thought I'd ask." In my heart, I planned a surprise. Tonight, I would prepare a home-cooked dinner, complete with her favorite wine. It was a small gesture, but perhaps it could mark the beginning of healing our bond and regaining her attention. After all, mending our relationship might just be the motivation I needed to rebuild my career. Was this response better or worse? I spent the day refreshing our home, with upbeat music playing in the background. I wanted the atmosphere to radiate warmth and welcome for Nicole's return. With every clean surface, washed dish, and empty trash, I felt a small sense of accomplishment. After making our home shine, I headed to the grocery store to gather ingredients for the evening's dinner. As an afterthought, I decided to visit the wine store to get Nicole's favorite wine. Upon entering, the familiar doorbell chime greeted me, and Pam, the saleswoman, recognized me with excitement. Pam greeted me, saying it had been a while and asking how I'd been. I gave a half smile and replied that I had had better days but was getting by. I inquired if they had a bottle of the rose wine, to which Pam playfully raised her eyebrows and teased about planning a romantic evening at home. I chuckled, attempting to sound nonchalant, and confirmed that it was something like that. I mentioned that Nicole had been there about an hour ago and had picked up a bottle of the same wine. Pam seemed to realize she might have said too much, and she stammered, suggesting that maybe Nicole was planning her own surprise. Clearing her throat, she efficiently wrapped the bottle for me, hoping to change the subject. As I headed home, my hopeful mood was replaced by a swirl of thoughts. I contemplated the possibilities. Could Nicole also be preparing a surprise for me? But why would she buy the wine in the afternoon? I gripped the steering wheel, a mix of anticipation and anxiety taking hold. I decided not to jump to conclusions. One thing was certain, I'd find out soon. Pulling into my driveway, I took a deep breath to calm my racing thoughts and set to work. The aroma of the dinner I'd prepared filled the house, offering a temporary distraction from my swirling thoughts. I glanced at the clock, 7:45. Nicole was usually punctual. Maybe her work held her up, I tried to reassure myself, but a nagging feeling lingered. Sitting in our dimly lit dining room, the table set for two, I occasionally checked my phone, hoping for a call or a message from Nicole. The house remained quiet, except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. Each passing moment heightened the mystery of Nicole's plans. Finally, around 8:30, my phone rang, and I recognized Nicole's ringtone. I answered quickly. "Hey?" Nicole's voice came through, rushed and slightly breathless. "Hey, babe, where are you?" I asked, masking my concern. "I'm so sorry, Robert," she replied hurriedly. An unexpected business trip came up, and I couldn't turn it down. My boss insisted. I tried to digest the news. "Oh, okay, but can't you leave in the morning or something?" "I'm actually already on my way there," she sighed and added. "It's a significant opportunity, could open some doors for me." I took a deep breath. I wanted to be understanding, especially considering my recent setbacks. "I understand. I wish you had told me sooner, though." I know, Nicole replied, the rush in her voice evident. "Everything happened so fast. I really have to go, Robert." I looked at the beautifully set table and the dinner I'd prepared. "All right, take care, Nicole. Call me when you can." Nicole's voice softened. "Okay, I will. I'll be back soon. Bye. And by the way, I don't know how long it's going to last, maybe like 2 weeks or so." As the call ended, I sank into a chair, my shoulders slumping under the weight of the evening's turn of events. I struggled to piece together the puzzle of my thoughts. The unexpected business trip seemed plausible, but the earlier wine purchase kept bothering me. Maybe she simply wanted to unwind during her trip and didn't mention it. I tried to rationalize, attempting to push aside the cloud of doubt forming in my mind. I took a deep breath, urging myself to focus on the present. Right in front of me was a delicious meal, and I was reluctant to let it go to waste. With renewed determination, I served myself some food and moved to the living room. The soft glow of the TV filled the room as I switched it on. The familiar sounds of a game in progress greeted me. I decided to immerse myself in it, temporarily pushing aside my concerns, or sometimes a little. Distraction was all I needed to find clarity. I relaxed on the couch, thoroughly enjoying the game's excitement. An occasional chuckle escaped my lips, indicating my genuine amusement. When my glass ran dry, I strolled to the kitchen for a refill. The evening's anxieties began to fade, replaced by a warmer, lighter feeling. As I passed the study, an unexpected light caught my eye. The computer screen was illuminated, something that typically happened when notifications came in or if it was disturbed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped into the study, switching on the overhead light. I mused to myself that maybe someone had left the computer on after having one too many drinks, but just as I was about to leave, another noise from the computer halted me in my tracks. A small pop-up in the screen's lower corner grabbed my attention, displaying the message. "Photos successfully synced." With raised eyebrows, I approached the computer and clicked on the notification. The screen showed the loading icon for a moment before revealing a list of files, all time-stamped from just hours ago. Tentatively, I opened one of the files, and the image started loading from top to bottom, gradually revealing a familiar face. As the image continued to load, Nicole's smiling face appeared, and her surroundings became clearer. By the time the image fully rendered, my heart sank. There she was, my wife, playfully taking a selfie while sitting on her boss's lap. The realization weighed heavily on me, and I slumped into a nearby chair, holding my head in my hands. All the doubts and suspicions that I had pushed aside came rushing back. now confirmed by the undeniable truth on the screen. The room seemed to close in on me as I stared at the image, the playful glint in Nicole's eyes, the familiarity with which she leaned into her boss. It all painted a story that I didn't want to believe. The wine I had consumed churned uneasily in my stomach. I returned to the list of files, clicking on another one. A sequence of photos revealed Nicole and her boss at a fancy bar. In some pictures, they were laughing and toasting with their glasses. In others, they were engaged in deep conversation, their faces close together. With each image, the reality of the situation became more evident. The evening's attempts to rekindle our relationship, the dinner I had prepared with care, it all seemed to taunt me now. A confusing mix of anger, pain, and betrayal flooded me, and most of all, I felt an overpowering sense of loss. I got up and returned to the living room, no longer interested in the wine I held. I was now looking for something stronger. With a light drizzle outside, I put on my coat and headed out slowly. I made my way to the liquor store. As I walked, my heart ached with pain. I could feel myself shattering into numerous pieces. Memories of the joyful times I shared with Nicole replayed in my mind, but now they were tinged with sadness. The question, why, echoed repeatedly. Why did Nicole grow distant? Was it because I had failed as a provider? I remembered the times when my business was thriving, when we both had big dreams. I had once enthusiastically promised Nicole the latest Mercedes, a symbol of success and luxury. But I never followed through on that promise. Could that unkempt promise be a part of why she distanced herself, or was it something more? It was hard to pinpoint one reason. Perhaps it was a combination of many small things, overlooked moments, and unspoken emotions. All I knew for certain was that our relationship had changed, leaving me with a profound sense of loss and confusion. I entered the store, rainwater dripping from my face and soaking my coat. Pam, upon recognizing me, noticed the fading smile on my face and paused for a moment, searching for the right words. "Hey, Robert," she began gently. "Having a tough day?" My voice was low, almost a whisper. "Whiskey, please." Pam, perceptive as always, sensed that something was amiss. "Are you sure about that? If you need someone to talk to." But I simply shook my head, interrupting her. "Just the whiskey, thanks." I took the bottle, offered a brief wary smile, and left the store. I didn't wait until I got home to open the whiskey. After a few swallows, the world began to spin. The drink heightened my emotions, breaking down my usual defenses. Stumbling a bit, I began speaking louder to strangers passing by. "Hey there," I slurred, pointing at no one in particular. "Do you know my wife? She's off somewhere, having the time of her life with her boss, and here I am, celebrating." I laughed bitterly, my words dripping with sarcasm. "Yep, a one-man party, that's me." As time passed, my speech became increasingly incoherent. I began to sing fragments of a song that had played in my home earlier, the same song meant to accompany a romantic dinner for two. My voice wavered, sometimes staying on key, other times going entirely off tune. The sadness in my rendition was palpable, the melody mirroring my broken heart. Stumbling along the sidewalk, I realized I had lost my whiskey bottle. Thinking I had finished it, I decided to return to the store for another. As I swayed and muttered to myself, I reached into my pocket for money, but it was nowhere to be found. It was then that I noticed an older man nearby, watching me with a mix of concern and curiosity. I raised my voice and my words slurred together as I confronted the old man, asking if he had something to say. The elderly man, wearing glasses and carrying a worn-out backpack, appeared surprised by my aggression at first. However, my tone quickly shifted from confrontational to desperate. I apologized to him, my voice breaking, and explained that I really needed a drink right now. I asked if he could spare $120. The old man sighed and reached into his pockets, pulling out a few crumpled dollar bills from his shirt pocket. He told me it was all he had and extended the money. To me, still steady on my feet, I accepted the money and mumbled my thanks. Then I suggested that he join me for a drink, but the old man gently declined, expressing concern that I had already had enough. I was about to respond defiantly when my stomach turned, and I vomited onto the pavement. The mist had soaked everything around, and the cold was settling in. Wet and disoriented, I leaned against a brick wall with my eyes closed, trying to catch my breath. The old man observed with a furrowed brow, expressing worry. He prodded gently, asking if I lived nearby. In my hardly coherent state, I simply murmured that I wanted to sleep. Surveying the nearly deserted street, with the dim light from a nearby lamppost casting long shadows on the wet pavement, the old man expressed concern that it wasn't a suitable place to sleep, especially in such weather conditions. He mustered his strength and helped me to my feet, taking most of my weight. Encouraging me, the old man led me toward a nearby bridge. Below the bridge, hidden from the rain and prying eyes, was a small makeshift shelter that served as the old man's temporary home. It was constructed from discarded materials and tarps, offering limited comfort, but at least it was dry and relatively warm. I stirred awake, the soft chirping of morning birds filling my ears. My surroundings seemed unfamiliar, a murky haze blurring my vision. My skull throbbed with pain from the previous night's excesses. I winced as I tried to make sense of where I was. The dim light revealed a simple wooden shelter. With a groan, I pushed back the curtain and stepped outside, attempting to orient myself. Next to a gentle river, an elderly man sat calmly, casting his fishing line. His posture remained relaxed, and his hands displayed steadiness despite the evident marks of time on his skin. Cautiously approaching the man, I greeted him with a questioning look. He responded with a knowing smile and remarked that it took me a while to wake up and that we had a bit too much fun the previous night. Momentarily taken aback by the man's warmth, I stammered, expressing my lack of memory regarding how I ended up there. The man, named Jim Hughes, chuckled and explained that I had consumed too much alcohol the night before, leading to me passing out on the pavement. He mentioned that it didn't feel right to leave me there, so he brought me to this place. My cheeks reddened with embarrassment, and I thanked Jim while expressing my hope that I hadn't caused any trouble. Jim leaned back, and the sun reflected off his aged eyes as he admitted that I had been a bit loud, particularly in my shouts about my wife. Feeling the weight of the previous night's events, I apologized and explained that I'd been going through a tough time lately. Jim's gaze softened, and he offered comforting words, mentioning that he had been in a similar situation, experiencing grief and feeling lost. He shared some wisdom, stating that pain has its own way of healing and that time can help. Jim suggested having breakfast for the moment. Without hesitation, I blurted out a request for something to drink, citing the splitting headache I was experiencing. Jim chuckled, showing he'd already anticipated this, and soon the delightful aroma of simmering fish soup filled the air. I watched as Jim skillfully prepared the meal, and I couldn't help but express how heavenly it smelled. Jim replied with a wink, attributing it to an old family recipe, perfect for mornings like these. As we enjoyed the warmth and flavor of the fish soup under the open sky, Jim took a moment to offer me some advice. I sighed and expressed my understanding of the need to avoid letting alcohol control one's life. Jim looked at me, his gaze pausing for a moment, and shared his perspective, mentioning that life is complex, and that sometimes it's best to let go and move on, particularly if someone has wronged you. I sensed a touch of sadness in his eyes but refrained from delving further into the subject. Instead, I thanked Jim for everything and mentioned my intention to head home. As I prepared to leave, I noticed some intricately carved wooden figures and objects outside the shack. Impressed, I asked if Jim had made them. Jim's eyes sparkled as he confirmed that he had crafted them, explaining that they were a piece of his past life that he still held on to and that woodworking brought him peace. I expressed my admiration, complimenting his talent. A smile blossomed on my face as I continued my journey home, hinting at newfound hope and a fresh start. Upon arriving home, I rushed to my computer and became determined to reach out to local furniture stores in the following days, pitching my ideas with enthusiasm. 1 week later, filled with hope and determination, I retraced my steps to Jim's riverside shack. I expected to find the elderly man there, but only Jim's backpack and jacket lay near the dwelling, as if he had just stepped away. Confusion clouded my thoughts. Where could Jim be? I scanned the surroundings, but the old man was nowhere in sight. Maybe he's out fishing or gathering wood, I thought, considering coming back the next day. As I started my journey back, a small, sharp stone found its way into my shoe. Each step grew increasingly uncomfortable, like an incessant itch I couldn't scratch. I let out a sigh of irritation and found a flat spot to sit down, eager to remove the annoying intruder. However, as I lifted my shoe, my eyes darted past it to a lone figure standing perilously close to the edge of the bridge in the distance. Panic gripped me. The scene looked all too familiar. Without a second thought, I quickly put my shoe back on, not even bothering to tie the laces. I shouted with desperation as I saw the person too close to the edge of the bridge, fearing the worst. I hoped that with each rapid step I could reach them in time, praying they would hear me and step back to safety. My feet thudded against the wooden planks of the bridge, and as I got closer, Jim's figure became clearer. Initially relieved to find my friend, my smile disappeared when I noticed a coiled rope on the ground next to Jim, replacing my relief with gut-wrenching fear. Jim's eyes, filled with pain and unshed tears, met mine, conveying the despair that words couldn't express. Without hesitation, I approached Jim with slow and deliberate movements, careful not to startle him. I reached out and put an arm securely around his shoulders. We stood there together, two souls on that bridge, sharing a moment of raw vulnerability. I tightened my grip, feeling Jim's body tremble as his tears finally flowed. I pulled him into a tight embrace, the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. "It's okay. I murmured softly into Jim's ear, my voice steady and reassuring. "I'm here. We'll face this together." Sitting side by side on the bridge, Jim slowly began to share his story with me, unraveling the threads of his life step by step. He began by mentioning his service to the country and his job at a food processing plant, emphasizing that it may not have been glamorous, but it was honest labor. Jim's voice carried a weary tone as he recounted his journey, mentioning that he had secured a small apartment and had done everything he could to provide for his daughter, who meant the world to him. The weight of his memories was palpable as he rubbed his forehead. He continued, explaining that he lost his job when the plant downsized and missed a rent payment, leading to his eviction just a week later. Jim expressed how he had felt like he had nothing and no safety net, with pain etched in his eyes. Jim continued his story, describing how it had felt like every door was closing on him. He mentioned returning to his hometown with the hope of better luck but faced difficulties due to his lack of a permanent address. Even job interviews ended in rejection because of his history of job loss. Jim looked down and fidgeted with his hands, conveying his anguish as he recounted how he was picked up for sleeping in places he shouldn't have been and fell seriously ill. He shared the scarcity of assistance and how he eventually found refuge in a friend's van, which was temporary. He mentioned stumbling upon the shack by the bridge, which had become his makeshift home. He let out a heavy sigh, expressing that the most painful part had been knowing his daughter was out there, thinking her father had abandoned her. Jim had been deeply despondent, feeling lost and without any hope for a brighter future. He had reached the bridge in a state of despair. My heart unexpectedly went out to Jim, this elderly man with his gentle demeanor and genuine smile. He stirred a protective instinct within me. As we walked back to the shack together, I spoke with genuine warmth, telling Jim that life had thrown some hard punches his way, but he was not alone in this battle anymore. Jim's eyes glistened with a mix of gratitude and astonishment. My mind raced with possibilities. I had a vision, and Jim possessed the skills. So I proposed to Jim the idea of partnering with me in starting a small furniture business, possibly beginning with crafting cradles. Jim looked taken aback by the unexpected proposal, but slowly a glimmer of hope began to shine in his eyes, a light that had been missing for a long time. He asked hesitantly if I would trust him with that endeavor, to which I replied confidently that I wouldn't have offered if I didn't. Over the following 2 weeks, the garage at my house echoed with the sounds of sawing, hammering, and laughter as we skillfully crafted exquisite wooden cradles. Each piece carried a story of hope and fresh beginnings. Jim became more than just a guest in my home. We shared meals, stories, and dreams, becoming like family with each passing day. I loaded the beautifully crafted wooden cradles into my truck and headed to the local furniture stores. The cradles immediately caught the attention of store owners with their intricate designs and expert craftsmanship. When one store owner inquired about the craftsman, I proudly told them about my friend Jim, emphasizing his remarkable talent. It didn't take long for the cradles to gain popularity. Customers appreciated their uniqueness and the exceptional craftsmanship that went into each piece. Word spread, and soon more and more stores were reaching out to me and Jim with orders. One day, my smartphone displayed my wife Nicole's name, filling me with anticipation and memories. In a brief conversation, Nicole mentioned a delay and the possibility of an extended trip abroad. When I inquired about what was going on, there was a moment of silence, followed by Nicole clearing her throat. She then explained her urgent need for a loan. Hesitating due to our history and the abruptness of her request, I eventually conveyed my inability. "Nicole, I'm sorry, but I can't do that right now." Her irritation was audible, and she sighed and responded sharply with a "Fine, forget it," before abruptly ending the call. Jim and my collaboration had taken off, and the demand for our finely crafted cradles was on the rise. Our small workspace was quickly becoming inadequate to handle the expanding business. As time passed, it became evident that we needed more space to accommodate our growing enterprise. I recalled a conversation with my friend Mark, who mentioned owning an old barn just outside of town. It was spacious, sturdy, and had been vacant for years. The transition to the barn went smoothly, and we hired a couple of eager local workers who were enthusiastic about learning the craft and becoming part of our growing success. I began to oversee operations more frequently from my home office. One evening, after a long day at the barn, Jim returned home to a pleasant surprise. Upon entering the house, he found me bustling around in the kitchen, which was an unusual sight. Typically, we would share a simple dinner with the rest of the crew back at the barn before calling it a day. However, this evening was different. The table was neatly set, and a delicious aroma filled the air. Seeing Jim standing there, somewhat perplexed, I motioned for him to take a seat at the table. "Please, sit down, Jim. Dinner will be ready shortly," I said with a friendly smile. Jim, though confused, complied and took a seat, observing me as I moved about the kitchen with determination. Eventually, I joined him at the table, removing my apron. My face lit up with a wide grin, piquing Jim's curiosity. "I hope you won't be upset, Jim," I began, my eyes gleaming with an indescribable emotion. Before Jim could inquire further, the doorbell rang. I quickly answered it, and a moment later a young girl hesitantly entered the room, her eyes filled with curiosity as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. A woman followed closely behind. Jim's face shifted from pale to flushed with emotion as he recognized his daughter, Mindy. He rose from his seat, stumbling slightly as he rushed towards her. They embraced tightly, their emotions needing no words to convey their feelings. Behind them, I stood with the young girl Kristen, smiling warmly at the heartwarming reunion. Mindy's voice quivered as she spoke amidst tears, expressing, "I thought I'd never see you again, Dad." Jim choked out with a trembling voice, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart, I should have reached out." In a soft tone, Mindy said, "You should have, Dad, but it's okay now," as she stroked her father's hair. Jim nodded, clinging to his daughter as if she would vanish if he let go. He then looked at Kristen and then at Mindy, slightly confused. Mindy laughed and informed him, "That's Kristen." Jim gazed at his granddaughter, a lovely little girl he had only seen as an infant in pictures. I clapped my hands gently, drawing their attention, and informed them, "Well, everyone, dinner is ready. Please, come to the table." As they gathered around the table, Mindy shared her struggles of the past month. Her obsession with finding her father had strained her relationship with her husband, ultimately leading to their separation. It had been a challenging journey, but at that moment, with her father by her side and new friends around, Mindy felt a sense of peace and closure she hadn't experienced in a long time. The warmth and laughter in my home multiplied with Mindy and Kristen's presence. They added a delightful energy that I recognized was healing for me. I invited them to stay, knowing how much it would help my friend rebuild the lost bond. One evening, while engrossed in paperwork in my home office, the main door squeaked open. It wasn't Jim or Mindy, and I knew this because they always announced their return cheerfully. Glancing out, I saw Nicole. She appeared weary, with slumped shoulders and dark circles under her eyes. She sighed, dropped her bags, and stretched. That trip was quite an experience. I watched her. Silently, a furrow forming on my forehead. She walked past me and slumped on the living room sofa, every move reflecting her exhaustion. Taking a deep breath, I approached her. I hesitated for a moment before sitting beside her, maintaining a bit of distance. Nicole glanced at me, trying to gauge my feelings. "Look, Robert, I know things have been complicated, but..." I raised a hand, interrupting her. "Did you have your phone sync turned on?" I asked, my voice low. Nicole looked puzzled, but realization soon crossed her face, her eyes widening in shock. I swallowed hard, holding back my emotions. "I saw the pictures, Nicole. I didn't need to see more than a few to understand." She moved closer, desperation in her eyes. "Robert, please listen. It's not how it seems. We were just..." I stood up abruptly, cutting her off. "I wish I hadn't seen those photos, Nicole, but now that I have, things can never be the same. I can't. I won't pretend everything's okay." Nicole's voice trembled as she pleaded. "Robert, just give me a chance to explain." I shook my head. "I think it's best if you leave, please." Nicole's tone escalated, her frustration evident. "So, this is it? You won't even hear me out? Fine, leave. But just remember, no one will ever stand by you the way I did. No one will love you like I did." The sound of the front door creaking open interrupted the tension in the room. Jim, having just entered, froze, realizing the gravity of the situation. He decided to give them some privacy and quietly retreated, gently closing the door behind him. Nicole's demeanor shifted as her attempts to assert herself failed. She appeared genuinely remorseful. "Robert, I'm truly sorry," she whispered. While I acknowledged her apology, I firmly requested that she leave. As Nicole exited, a cheerful Kristen was playing on the lawn. She spied me and rushed over, hugging my legs tightly. The innocent embrace seemed to emphasize the contrast between the past and a potential future. Nicole watched, taking in the scene. A pang of realization struck her. Perhaps someone else would indeed offer me the love and respect I deserved, something she had been unable to provide.
Hello and welcome Cheating Tales Lab. We really appreciate you stopping by. Today's tale is full of twists and turns that you're sure to enjoy. So, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. John Warren stood before the city council, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. At 45, he was in his prime as an architect, and this moment felt like the culmination of years of hard work and dedication. The innovative design for a sustainable community center he was presenting wasn't just another project. It was his passion, his vision for bringing people together in a space that could truly make a difference. As he spoke, his enthusiasm was palpable. Each word carried the weight of countless hours of planning, designing, and refining. The council members leaned forward, clearly engaged by John's presentation. When he finished, a palpable silence filled the room before the mayor broke into a warm smile. "Mr. Warren, your vision is exactly what this city needs," she said, her voice carrying a note of genuine admiration. "We'll be in touch soon with our final decision." John nodded, trying to keep his expression professional despite the surge of triumph he felt inside. As he gathered his materials, he could hear the council members murmuring among themselves, their tones positive and excited. He allowed himself a small smile as he left the chamber. The crisp autumn air hit John's face as he stepped outside, grounding him after the intensity of the presentation. He took a deep breath, savoring the moment. This project could be the one to cement his legacy, to truly make a mark on the city he loved. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed in his pocket. John pulled it out, expecting a congratulatory message from Ruby, his wife of 15 years. Instead, the text he saw made his heart sink slightly. "Working late again. Don't wait up," John sighed, pocketing the phone without replying. It wasn't the first time Ruby had sent such a message, and lately, they seemed to be coming more frequently. A small voice in the back of his mind whispered that something wasn't right, but he pushed it away. Their relationship had been strained recently, but he attributed it to the stress of his big project. Once things settled down, they'd have time to reconnect. Little did John know, the storm brewing in his personal life would soon make his professional triumphs seem insignificant in comparison. Later that evening, John sat in his home office, the glow of his computer screen illuminating his focused expression. He was reviewing some final tweaks to his design, determined to perfect every detail. The house was quiet, Ruby's absence a tangible thing in the stillness. Needing to send an urgent email to a colleague, John realized he'd left his laptop in the car. Rather than trudge outside, he decided to use the shared computer in the living room. As he sat down, he noticed Ruby had left her account logged in. He was about to sign out when a message caught his eye. It was from Ruby to her mother, and the content made his blood run cold. "Once I have enough of his money in my own account, I'll leave him and tell the police he abused our housekeeper. That should put him away for a long time." John stared at the screen, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. The woman he'd loved and trusted for 15 years was plotting to destroy him. In an instant, his world shattered. The future he'd imagined, building his career, growing old with Ruby, crumbled to dust. For a moment, white-hot anger coursed through his veins. He wanted to confront Ruby, to demand answers, to shake her until she explained how she could betray him like this. But as quickly as the rage came, it subsided, replaced by a cold, calculated fury. John forced himself to remain calm. He knew he needed to act strategically. Over the next few days, John became a master of deception. On the surface, he maintained his usual routine, going to work, discussing the community center project, even sharing meals with Ruby when their schedules aligned. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, he was meticulously gathering evidence. He discovered Ruby had been siphoning money from their joint accounts into a secret one under her maiden name. The amounts were small enough not to raise immediate suspicion, but over time, they had accumulated into a substantial sum. John's jaw clenched as he realized how long this betrayal must have been in the works. But the financial deception was just the beginning. As John dug deeper, he uncovered a trove of text messages between Ruby and her lover, James Vega. James was a smooth-talking real estate agent they'd met at a charity gala last year. John remembered how Ruby had gushed about James' charm and business acumen. Now, reading their intimate exchanges, he felt sick. Their messages revealed not just a passionate affair, but a carefully orchestrated plan to ruin John. They discussed how to manipulate their friends into believing John was abusive, how to stage evidence, and how to ensure Ruby would come out of the divorce with as much money as possible. With each new piece of evidence, John's resolve hardened. He'd built his career on creating spaces that brought people together, but now he was preparing for a battle that would tear his life apart. The irony wasn't lost on him. Knowing he needed more than just digital evidence, John hired a private investigator to follow Ruby and James. The PI returned with a file of damning photographs, Ruby and James in intimate embraces, entering hotels together, sharing secretive meetings in out-of-the-way cafes. Each image was like a knife to John's heart, but he forced himself to study them dispassionately. These would be crucial in the fight ahead. Armed with this mountain of evidence, John contacted his lawyer, Wade Potter. Wade had been a friend for years, and John trusted him implicitly. When John laid out the situation, Wade's usually jovial face turned grim. "John, this is serious," Wade said, his voice low and urgent as he reviewed the evidence. "We need to move quickly and decisively. If what you've uncovered is true, and it certainly seems to be, Ruby and James could destroy your life if they act first." Together, they formulated a plan. John would drain Ruby's secret account, gather all evidence of her plot and the affair, and disappear before she could enact her scheme. It was a risky move, but staying put was even riskier. "Are you sure about this, John?" Wade asked, concern evident in his eyes. "Once you set this in motion, there's no going back. Your life as you know it will be over." John met his friend's gaze steadily. "My life as I knew it ended the moment I read that email, Wade. Now it's about survival and making sure justice is served." Wade nodded, impressed by John's resolve. "All right then, let's get to work." The next few days were a blur of activity. John moved money, compiled evidence, and made discreet arrangements for his disappearance. All the while, he maintained a facade of normalcy around Ruby, even as every smile she gave him, every casual touch, made his skin crawl. Finally, everything was in place. John packed a small bag with essentials, his heart heavy but his determination unwavering. As he zipped up the bag, he heard Ruby's key in the lock. For a moment, panic gripped him. Had she somehow discovered his plan? But there was no time for doubt. John slipped out the back door, his pulse pounding in his ears. As he walked away from the house he'd called home for over a decade, he didn't look back. His old life was over, but he was determined to come out on top. In the growing darkness, John Warren disappeared into the night, leaving behind a life built on lies and stepping into an uncertain future. But for the first time since discovering Ruby's betrayal, he felt a glimmer of hope. The storm was coming, but he was ready to weather it. Ruby Warren's heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she entered the empty house. The silence that greeted her was unusual, even unsettling. "John," she called out, her voice echoing through the rooms. No response. A frown creased her perfectly made-up face as she moved from room to room, each one as empty and silent as the last. Something was off. John was always home at this hour, usually buried in his work in the home office. As the realization that John was indeed gone sank in, a cold tendril of fear wormed its way into Ruby's stomach. She rushed to their shared computer, fingers flying over the keyboard as she logged into their joint accounts. Her eyes widened in shock, mouth falling open as she stared at the screen. The accounts had been drained. Every last cent, gone. "That bastard," she hissed, hands clenching into fists. "He knows." Panic rising in her throat, Ruby grabbed her phone and dialed James with trembling fingers. He picked up on the second ring. "He knows," she spat into the phone, not bothering with pleasantries. "That bastard took everything and disappeared." James's smooth voice came through the line, tinged with confusion. "Whoa, slow down, baby. What are you talking about?" "John." Ruby nearly screamed. "He's gone, James. And he took all the money with him. He must have found out about our plan." There was a moment of silence on the other end. When James spoke again, his voice had lost its usual cockiness. "I'll be right there." 20 minutes later, James Vega strode into the Warren residence, his tailored suit and slicked-back hair a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around him. Ruby was pacing the living room, her earlier composure completely shattered. "We need to find him before he goes to the police," James said, his own arrogance replaced by a palpable fear. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up its perfect arrangement. Ruby whirled on him, eyes flashing. "No," she snapped. "We stick to the plan. We'll say he abused the housekeeper and fled. It's our word against his." James stared at her, momentarily taken aback by her vehemence. "But Ruby, if he has evidence, he doesn't." Ruby cut him off. "He can't. We were careful, but even as she said the words, doubt crept into her voice. Had they been careful enough? Little did Ruby and James know, their every word was being recorded. John, always meticulous in his planning, had installed hidden cameras throughout the house before his departure. Their panicked conversation was providing even more damning evidence against them. As Ruby and James continued to argue, their voices rising and falling in waves of accusation and fear, the cameras silently captured it all. John's foresight was proving to be their undoing. Each word they spoke another nail in the coffin of their scheme. Meanwhile, across town, John Warren was checking into a small, nondescript motel under an assumed name. The room was a far cry from the luxurious home he'd shared with Ruby, but it would serve its purpose. John set his bag down on the worn carpet and took a seat at the rickety desk. From his bag, he pulled out a laptop and a stack of folders. Despite the turmoil in his personal life, John was determined not to let Ruby and James's betrayal derail his career. Over the next few days, John divided his time between meticulously organizing the evidence against Ruby and James and focusing on his community center project. The work provided a welcome distraction from the pain of betrayal, allowing him to channel his emotions into something productive. As he pored over blueprints and design specifications, John's mind occasionally wandered to Ruby and James. He wondered what they were doing, how they were reacting to his disappearance. A part of him, the part that still ached from their betrayal, hoped they were suffering. But John pushed those thoughts aside. He couldn't afford to dwell on the past. He had a future to secure, both personally and professionally. Back at the Warren residence, Ruby and James were putting their plan into action. They had decided to go to the police, spinning a tale of John's alleged abuse and sudden disappearance. Ruby had spent hours practicing her story in front of the mirror, perfecting the right mix of fear and vulnerability. James had coached her, drawing on his experience in sales to help her craft a convincing narrative. As they sat in the police station, waiting to speak with a detective, Ruby leaned close to James. "Remember," she whispered, "stick to the story. No matter what they ask, don't deviate." James nodded, his jaw set in determination. He reached out and squeezed Ruby's hand, a gesture of reassurance that was captured by the security cameras overhead. Detective Kane Hamilton entered the room, his weathered face set in a neutral expression. He'd seen countless cases of domestic abuse over his career, but something about this one felt off from the start. "Mrs. Warren," he began, his tone professional but not unkind, "can you tell me what happened?" Ruby launched into her prepared story, her voice trembling at all the right moments. She painted a picture of John as a monster, a man who presented a charming face to the world while terrorizing those at home. He would get so angry," Ruby said, her eyes welling with carefully practiced tears. "The smallest things would set him off. But he was always so careful not to leave marks where people could see." James nodded solemnly, playing the part of the supportive friend. "I had no idea," he added. John always seemed so calm and collected in public. Detective Hamilton listened, his expression unchanging. Years of experience had taught him to reserve judgment until he had all the facts. And something about this case was raising red flags. "Mrs. Warren," he said when Ruby had finished her tale, "these are serious allegations. We'll need to speak with your housekeeper." Ruby paled slightly, her composure slipping for just a moment. "Of course," she said, her voice wavering. She's very traumatized. It might take some time to convince her to come forward." Detective Hamilton's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. The hesitation in Ruby's voice, the quick glance she shared with James, it all added to his growing suspicion that there was more to this story than met the eye. "I understand," he said carefully. "Please let us know as soon as she's ready to talk. Her testimony will be crucial to our investigation." As Ruby and James left the police station, they felt a mix of relief and anxiety. They had taken the first step in their plan, but the detective's questions had unsettled them both. "Do you think he believed us?" James asked as they walked to the car. Ruby shot him a glare. "Of course he did. We were convincing. Now we just need to figure out what to do about the housekeeper." What Ruby and James didn't know was that their plan was already beginning to unravel. While they had been spinning their tale to Detective Hamilton, John had made his move. From his motel room, John had sent an anonymous tip to Detective Hamilton, along with a portion of the evidence he'd gathered. The package included financial records showing Ruby's embezzlement, text messages between Ruby and James discussing their affair and their plot against John, and a sample of the video footage from the hidden cameras in the house. When Detective Hamilton returned to his desk after interviewing Ruby and James, he found the package waiting for him. As he went through its contents, his eyes widened in disbelief. The evidence painted a completely different picture than the one Ruby and James had presented. Without wasting a moment, Detective Hamilton picked up his phone and dialed. "Mrs. Warren, Mr. Vega, I need you to come back to the station immediately," he said, his tone now stern and authoritative. "There are some inconsistencies in your statements that we need to discuss." Ruby and James exchanged nervous glances as they sat once again in the interview room. The detective's demeanor had changed dramatically since their last meeting. Gone was the sympathetic listener. In his place sat a man who looked like he was about to spring a trap. "Mrs. Warren, Mr. Vega," Detective Hamilton began, his voice cool and professional. "I have some questions about your earlier statements. There seem to be some inconsistencies that I'd like to clear up." Ruby forced a confused smile. "Of course, Detective. We want to help in any way we can. What seems to be the problem?" Detective Hamilton laid out a series of documents on the table. "Can you explain these bank transfers, Mrs. Warren? Large sums of money being moved from your joint accounts with Mr. Warren to an account under your maiden name." Ruby's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. James jumped in, his salesman's instincts kicking in. "Detective, I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for—" "I'm not finished, Mr. Vega." Hamilton cut him off sharply. He then produced a stack of printed text messages. "Perhaps you'd like to explain these exchanges between the two of you? They seem to detail quite a different story than the one you told me earlier." As Ruby and James sat in stunned silence, their carefully constructed plan crumbling around them, Detective Hamilton continued to lay out the evidence. With each new revelation, their demeanor shifted from confident to panicked. "I think it's time you told me the truth," Hamilton said finally, leaning back in his chair. "The real truth, this time." Ruby and James exchanged a look of desperation. They were cornered, and they both knew it. Their perfect plan, the one they had been so sure would succeed, had fallen apart in a matter of hours. As they began to stammer out explanations and excuses, Detective Hamilton allowed himself a small, grim smile. Justice, it seemed, had a way of revealing itself, no matter how clever the deception. John Warren stepped out of his rental car, his eyes scanning the familiar streets of the city he'd called home for so long. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions and calculated moves, but now it was time to face the storm he'd set in motion. He straightened his tie and walked purposefully towards the police station. The weight of the evidence he carried felt like both a burden and a shield. As he pushed open the heavy glass doors, John steeled himself for what was to come. Detective Kane Hamilton looked up from his desk as John approached. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by a mix of curiosity and relief. "Mr. Warren," the detective said, rising to greet him. "I'm glad you came in. We have a lot to discuss." John nodded, his face a mask of determination. "Indeed we do, Detective. I believe I have some information that will shed light on recent events." Detective Hamilton ushered John into a private interview room. As they settled into their seats, John began to lay out the entire story. He spoke clearly and concisely, his emotions tightly controlled as he revealed the depth of Ruby and James' betrayal. He produced document after document, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. Bank statements showing Ruby's embezzlement, text messages detailing the affair and their plot, photographs from the private investigator, and finally, the video recordings from the hidden cameras in their home. As John presented his case, Detective Hamilton listened intently. His expression shifted from skepticism to shock, and finally to a grudging respect for the man sitting before him. "Mr. Warren," Hamilton said when John had finished, "I've been a detective for over 20 years, and I've never seen a case quite like this. The level of deception you've uncovered, it's staggering." John's jaw tightened. "They thought they could destroy me, Detective. They underestimated how far I'd go to protect myself. Hamilton nodded, understanding the steel behind John's words. I'm sorry you had to go through this, he said finally, his tone genuinely sympathetic. Rest assured, we'll be pursuing charges against your wife and Mr. Vega. Conspiracy, fraud, attempting to pervert the course of justice. They're looking at serious time. John felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Justice was in motion. The fear and anger that had driven him for weeks began to ebb, replaced by a sense of vindication. As he left the station, John took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. For the first time since discovering Ruby's betrayal, he felt like he could breathe freely. The road ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face it head-on. The next morning, John found himself once again standing before the city council. This time, however, the stakes felt different. His community center project, once just a professional aspiration, had become a lifeline, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos of his personal life. As he began his presentation, John pushed aside thoughts of Ruby, James, and the ongoing investigation. He focused entirely on his vision for the community center, pouring all of his passion and expertise into every word. The council members listened attentively, their expressions a mix of interest and something else. Was it admiration? John realized that news of his personal ordeal must have reached them, adding an extra layer of context to his presentation. As he concluded, a hush fell over the room. John held his breath, waiting for the council's response. To his surprise, the mayor stood up, a warm smile on her face. "Mr. Warren," she began, her voice filled with genuine respect, "in light of recent events that have come to our attention, we want to commend your strength and integrity. Your dedication to this project, despite the personal challenges you've faced, is truly admirable." John felt a lump form in his throat, but he maintained his composure, meeting the mayor's gaze steadily. "Your vision for this community center is exactly what our city needs," the mayor continued. "It's not just about the building itself, but about the spirit behind it, the desire to bring people together, to create something positive in the face of adversity. Mr. Warren, I'm pleased to inform you that your project is approved." The room erupted in applause. John stood there, momentarily stunned by the turn of events. As the reality of the moment sank in, a sense of triumph washed over him. His professional dream was becoming a reality, even as his personal life had crumbled. In that moment, John realized that his dedication and resilience had seen him through both challenges. As the council members came forward to congratulate him, John allowed himself a small smile. He had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. Weeks passed, and John threw himself into the early stages of the community center project. The work provided a welcome distraction from the ongoing legal proceedings against Ruby and James. He immersed himself in blueprints and contractor meetings, finding solace in the tangible progress of his vision taking shape. But the day of reckoning couldn't be postponed forever. On a crisp morning in late autumn, John found himself standing in a crowded courtroom, watching as Ruby and James were led in, their hands cuffed behind their backs. The trial had been swift and decisive. The mountain of evidence John had gathered left little room for doubt. As the judge prepared to deliver the verdict, John studied the faces of the two people who had once meant everything to him. Ruby looked pale and drawn, her usually immaculate appearance now haggard. James, stripped of his arrogance, seemed small and defeated. As the judge pronounced them guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and attempting to pervert the course of justice, John felt no satisfaction, only a profound sense of closure. As Ruby and James were led away, Ruby caught John's eye. "I'm sorry," she mouthed, her face a mask of regret and fear. John simply turned away. He had no words for her, no forgiveness to offer. Their chapter was closed, and he was ready to move on. Leaving the courthouse, John's eyes were drawn to a construction site across the street. The foundation of his community center was being laid, the skeleton of the building beginning to take shape. It struck him as a powerful symbol, new beginnings rising from the ashes of betrayal and deceit. That evening, John sat in his new apartment, a glass of whiskey in hand. The space was smaller than the house he'd shared with Ruby, but it felt more like home. As he looked out over the city skyline, he reflected on the brutal journey he'd endured. He had lost his wife and the life he'd known, but he'd maintained his integrity. He'd faced betrayal and come out stronger, more resilient. The man who sat here now was not the same one who had stood before the city council all those weeks ago, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break. As John sipped his whiskey, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. The future, he realized, was full of possibilities. He had his health, his career, and a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. Setting down his glass, John turned to his drafting table, where the latest plans for the community center lay spread out. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to make a difference. And John Warren was ready for all of it.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
Last year on Father's Day began like any other. I'd be up early, waiting for my wife and teenage daughters to join me. On Mother's Day, I'd treat my wife to mimosas for breakfast, a fancy cheese plate for lunch, and her favorite steak dinner. As the girls grew older, I handled the pampering solo. On Father's Day, my wife usually cooked me a special breakfast, though last year was different. I waited until she woke to eat, starving by then. When she finally did, she greeted me with a kiss and got to work on a family breakfast. We later enjoyed lunch at a quirky cafe with Doctor Who-themed sandwiches. My wife, a calendar devotee, orchestrates our life with precision, managing holidays and kids' activities with ease. All events, from holidays to birthdays, are marked on our calendar, rarely overlooked except by me. When my wife noticed my birthday coincided with Father's Day, I wasn't surprised. She joked about double gifts, promising something special. I kissed her cheek, hoping for more than the usual. She usually teased with head employments during foreplay, but on my birthday and Father's Day, they were special treats, given without expectation of return. I wasn't clueless. I was excited, thinking I might get a rare treat on my upcoming birthday. But as the weeks passed, things felt off. My wife, usually steady, started acting strange, working late, dressing up more for her job at the bakery, even wearing makeup. Doubts crept in when she went out alone on a Friday, which was unusual for us. We were a tight-knit couple, preferring each other's company. Our marriage felt solid. We weren't big on going out. Our ideal night was lounging at home, so seeing her dolled up that Friday was unexpected. She wore a new skirt, tan stockings, and heels, looking like she'd been to the salon. I whistled, thinking we had plans, but she explained she was going out with coworkers. Shocked, I asked why she hadn't mentioned it earlier. She seemed uneasy, but apologized, claiming she'd just been asked. I eyed her outfit, questioning how she managed all that in an hour at work. I grew increasingly frustrated, sensing her dishonesty, yet unable to confront her. Her infidelity seemed unfathomable. She embodied the typical suburban wife and mother. Our bed life remained vibrant, adding to my confusion. When she brushed off my suspicions, claiming she worked half a day and wanted to look nice, I was left speechless as she hurried out the door. She returned near midnight, her hair hastily tied up, dispelling any notion of a salon visit. Ignoring me, she headed straight for the shower, leaving me bewildered. Something was amiss in our seemingly perfect life, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending trouble, especially considering my line of work in retail. On Saturday morning, as I prepared for work, my wife didn't wake to bid me farewell as she usually did. I found it surprising. At the store, I encountered Missy, the morning barista, waiting at the entrance. With her striking blue eyes and red hair, she caught my attention, despite my contented marriage. Redheads had always intrigued me. "Hey, Bill," she called out as I approached the entrance, still locked, as it was half an hour before opening. Missy had mentioned feeling uncomfortable with the night crew. "Good morning, Missy," I greeted, unlocking the doors. "What's up, Bill? You look down," she observed. "Just a lot on my mind today," I admitted. She gave me a curious look, but didn't pry. "Give me a sec. I'll get you some of our best coffee," she offered. Forced to smile, I replied, "Sounds good. I'll join you soon." I secured the doors while she hastened to ready the cafe for the busy morning ahead. Knowing how bustling our little cafe became once the store opened, I made my rounds on the floor, checking in on the department crews. While my competent department managers made these checks unnecessary, I valued the chance to greet and chat with my team. Maintaining positive relationships with them mattered to me, and I believe they appreciated the effort. My final stop was at the coffee shop, where Missy had my usual large black coffee ready and waiting. "Here's your cup of Megamart's finest brew," Missy said, handing it over. "Thanks, Missy," I replied, pushing $2 across the counter. "No need for payment today, boss," she insisted. "Can't take any chances, Missy. I cover all my expenses here. Last thing I need is someone causing trouble with corporate," I explained. She gasped. "Bill, I'd never do that." "Not saying you would, Missy, but I can't risk it, even for a $2 coffee. You'd be surprised what I have to deal with. Denying someone a day off or cutting overtime, it's just not worth it," I explained. "All right, boss, understood." She nodded. I waved farewell and took a sip from my mug, aware that some employees likely receive free coffee occasionally, though it was impossible to track. It wasn't worth the hassle of monitoring video footage just to ensure everyone paid. As the company's leader, I faced risks, dealing with employee frustrations over trivial matters like parking regulations, prompting unnecessary HR calls. The day passed quietly, with the highlight being an old lady stealing cat and bird food. It provided the distraction I needed, keeping me occupied without dwelling on my marital issues. Upon returning home, I found my wife and daughters heading out to a concert with other families. While it had been planned and noted on the calendar, I had forgotten. I hoped to speak with Katie later, eager to resolve our recent tensions. Not knowing what had transpired the previous night nagged at me, leaving me with little else to dwell on. Tonight, I seized the chance to snoop around. I checked her email, expecting it to be fruitless, but surprisingly, no one else had sent messages. Since she had a cell phone, I couldn't check her texts or call log. Checking her clothes for clues was also futile, as she'd already done her Saturday laundry. Frustrated, I achieved nothing and went to bed after the movie feeling just as unsettled. On my birthday and Father's Day, I began my day as usual, toast, coffee, and enjoying the morning on the terrace. It was beautiful, with birds chirping, and I pondered what the day held in store. Around 9, I returned inside to refill my coffee and found my wife and daughters up and packing lunch. Surprised by their early activity, I questioned their plans. Jill announced a beach trip, catching me off guard. As they departed, I realized they remembered my birthday, unlike how I often had to remind them of important dates. Perplexed by Katie's oversight, I received a call from my mom, hoping it was them coming back, but it wasn't. "Hey, Billy, happy birthday and Father's Day," Mom greeted. "Thanks, Mom. Kathy's got some big plans for you guys today," I replied. "Nope, she took the girls to the beach just a bit ago," she informed me. "Really? That's not like her. I'd have thought she'd whip up a tasty breakfast and make today special for you," I commented. "Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure what's up lately. She's been acting strange for weeks now," Mom shared. "Well, don't sweat it. She probably has something special lined up for later. I've got to head to church." "Love you, Billy," Mom assured me. "Love you, Mom." Mom's eternal optimism and her close relationship with Kathy always warmed my heart, especially since Dad passed away a few years ago. I stood there, pondering the state of my marriage, when the phone rang once more. It was my assistant, Anne. "Bill, there was an incident at the coffee shop this morning." "What happened? Was Missy involved?" "Unfortunately, yes. She was on the stairs when a customer shoved her. She lost her balance and took a fall." "Oh my goodness. Is she all right?" "They've taken her to St. Alex's Hospital for x-rays. It looks like she might have a broken arm or something." "Poor girl. Do you need me to cover her shift?" "No, everything's sorted. I just wanted to give you a heads up for tomorrow. I apologize for reaching out on Father's Day." "Don't worry about it, Anne. Thanks for letting me know." I hoped Missy was all right, but assuming they wouldn't return, I went to IHOP for breakfast. The bustling atmosphere, filled with happy families celebrating fathers, overwhelmed me, and I left to avoid breaking down. Opting for McDonald's, I enjoyed a satisfying breakfast with coffee and orange juice. Sitting in the park, I reminisced about boating trips with my daughters when they were young, realizing they had grown distant as they neared college. Their outings with their mother became more frequent, perhaps for the best. I acknowledged there would likely be no dinner together as the day wore on, so I grabbed a Reuben at the doctor-themed cafe. A Facebook post garnered the usual Father's Day wishes, but my mother-in-law's comment about the beach trip surprised me, as my wife had been posting beach photos. Feeling down, I sought solace in a sports bar, but soon retreated to a cigar lounge, indulging in a pricey Opus X. Settling in to watch the game, I was invited to join a group playing cards. "I'm Bill," I introduced myself to the older gentleman. "I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry. Pleasure to meet you both." They finished their handshake and included me in their little 5-card game. "Grab yourself a drink, Bill," Lance offered, placing the cooler on the floor. I expressed gratitude and opted for a Miller Lite. "No kids, or did the ex take them with a new guy?" Jerry quipped with a smirk. I frowned and replied, "My wife and the girls are at the beach. Seems like they've lost track of the day." "Tough break," Lance chimed in. "I hardly see my boys. They're both in the service." Jerry nodded, adding, "My daughter's out in California. My grandson Charlie just turned 2. I'm heading there next week." "That sounds wonderful," I said. As my daughters hit 17 and 18, I began longing for the days of them being little. They nodded in agreement. Eventually, the conversation circled back to my wife. "Do you think she genuinely forgot, or is she avoiding you?" Jerry asked, echoing my own thoughts. Recounting the recent weeks and Friday's issues, they shook their heads in disbelief. "She's cheating on you," Lance asserted, with Jerry nodding in agreement. "I can't believe it," I muttered, grappling with the revelation, though deep down I knew it made sense. "Listen, Bill," Lance began, recounting his own experience. "I've been down this road. The sudden changes in behavior. The late nights out, dressed provocatively. The lack of respect. Been there, buddy." Lance shared how he regretted his initial reaction of divorcing his unfaithful wife, highlighting the financial and emotional toll it took. "Bill, trust me," he continued, urging me to consider forgiveness if I truly loved her. "It'll be better for you in the long run. Guys in their 40s don't often get second chances at love. Thank you, Lance. You've given me a lot to think about." I might have said it aloud, but deep down, I thought he was crazy. Forgiving her for cheating and staying married seemed impossible. I shook both men's hands, bid them farewell, and left. As I scrolled through Facebook on the couch, dinner time approached. Seeing my daughters and wife's posts filled with pictures of their joyful day saddened me further. Enough of this, I thought. It was time to face reality. My wife had forgotten my birthday and Father's Day. What did it matter? What counted was my certainty that she had cheated, especially after Friday night's strange behavior. Her goal seemed to be rubbing it in my face, and now she had succeeded. Determined to move forward, I prepared for the evening. I decided to treat myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant, even if it meant a long wait. After a shower and donning my sport coat and slacks, I headed out for steak. Sitting at the bar, awaiting a table, an older man took the seat beside me. Observing my solitary champagne bottle, he frowned but refrained from comment, opting for a martini. As the bartender filled my glass, he couldn't resist asking if I was celebrating alone or taking someone else's place. I assured him it was just me. He nodded and took a sip, revealing he was awaiting his family, 3 generations strong despite his daughter breaking her arm earlier. He chuckled, noting the unexpected nature of grown children breaking bones. I nodded in agreement. "Looks like I'll be cooking solo for a while. My wife needs to focus on taking care of Missy and Mia and leave me be." Suddenly, a little girl called out, "Grandpa!" and dashed across the crowded bar, showering the man with affectionate hugs and kisses. Then I heard my name. Missy and her mother approached me. The resemblance between them was striking. "Hey, Missy, how's your arm?" I inquired. "Not bad. The painkillers are doing their job. But it was rough when they said it," she replied. Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and their adorable daughter, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" Mary asked. "I'm not sure. She took the girls to the beach this morning, and I haven't heard from them all day." "On Father's Day? And it's your birthday too?" Mary exclaimed. "That's terrible. What's going on with her?" Not wanting to delve into it, I shrugged. "Forget about her, you're joining us," Mary insisted. I grasped Jack's reference to his red rage. "You don't want them to gang up on you, Bill," he chuckled, a testament to his experience dealing with familial conflicts. "But it's your day, Jack. I don't want to intrude," I replied. "Nonsense," he retorted. "This is our day, Bill. Grandpa, remember?" As their table's buzzer sounded, he tossed a $20 bill and left, insisting I meet him at our table. "Sorry about that, Bill. My parents can be stubborn," Missy apologized. "Don't worry, Missy. Eating alone would be worse," I assured her. Dinner conversation remained light, filled with anecdotes about our daughters. Mia giggled at stories of her mom's childhood antics. Later, my phone rang, but I ignored it, placing it on the table. "Your wife?" Mary inquired. "Yes, it's complicated," I admitted. "Maybe you can find a way to forgive her," Mary suggested, glancing at Jack. I signaled for the check, expressing gratitude for the meal and treating them. As I signed the check, I pondered the advice I'd received, despite lacking solid evidence of her infidelity. Ignoring the persistent ringing of my phone, I couldn't help but wonder what was wrong with people. As I pulled into the garage, my daughters greeted me with kisses and hugs, apologizing for forgetting Father's Day. "Girls, it's okay. I don't expect you to remember my birthday," I reassured them. Suddenly, Jill exclaimed, "Wait, it's your birthday today." She rushed inside, yelling at my wife. "Daddy, we didn't know. We're so sorry. You must hate us," Jill lamented. "No, sweetheart, I love you more than anything. We decided last night to go to the beach today, and we didn't realize it was your birthday." "It's okay, don't worry, I'm not upset with you," I comforted her. Though I didn't express my anger toward her mother, it was my issue, not my daughter's. Ignoring the chaos in the kitchen, I changed upstairs and returned to find my wife sobbing alone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I shook my head and retreated to the deck with a beer and cigar. Enjoying the serene evening, my wife interrupted me. "Bill, What's his name?" I interjected, my anger rising. She didn't respond, and I realized I was headed for divorce. What a mistake marrying her had been after nearly 20 years. At this point, I began fearing the worst. How long had she been unfaithful? Was he her first? Did I even know him? Were these girls truly mine? It's astonishing the negative thoughts that invade your mind when you're mistreated. I decided to request a paternity test for the girls as part of the divorce, not only for my peace of mind, but also to embarrass Katie. I spent the night researching divorce laws online before falling asleep on the couch. How I spent my birthday. Waking at 5 in the morning, I found Katie peacefully asleep in my bedroom, her undressed body curled around her pillow. Despite my restless night, she looked serene. Sadly, she was no longer mine, but I couldn't help admiring her beauty. After a quick shower, I left without waking her, only to be met by Jill in the hallway. "How bad is it, Dad?" she asked. "As bad as it can get," I sighed. "Can you forgive her? It's just one day's mistake," she pleaded. "Honey, it's more than forgetting my birthday or Father's Day. She cheated on me," I explained. "No, Dad, she wouldn't do that. Something must have pushed her, but I won't accept it. Think about it. She's been acting strange for weeks. Friday night, after getting all done up, she went out dressed provocatively." "That wasn't for you," Jill reasoned. "She avoided me all weekend. Clearly, she felt guilty or resentful toward me and didn't want to be around me at all." "When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? It's always a family outing. What if it's not an affair? What if it was just a one-time thing? Can't you forgive her for once?" Jill pleaded. "I doubt that's the case, honey. But look at her actions this weekend. Has she shown love toward me?" I questioned. "Daddy, you didn't see her face when Grandma called to ask why she didn't wish Grandpa a happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and yelled no so loudly we thought Grandpa was having a heart attack," Jill recounted. "He's fine, Dad. Mom sobbed on her knees until we helped her up and sat her on the couch. She kept repeating that she loves you. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. We calmed her down and convinced her to call you," Jill continued. "I don't know what to say, Jill. She doesn't love me. You can't cheat on your spouse and claim to love them. That's not love, it's selfishness. Love should be selfless. When she was with another man, she abandoned me," I concluded. She hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't imagine it was just some random guy she met at a bar. There must have been flirting, or her accepting his advances. Pleasure touches, maybe even kissing and caressing, all leading up to her being with him. It's a betrayal to your spouse. To show carnal affection to someone else when you're in love, please don't divorce her. I have to head to work now. We'll talk more later," she said, walking into Jenny's room. I promised to discuss our conversation with Jenny. No more secrets in our family. I wondered how long we'd remain a family. Despite Kathy's likely busy schedule, I felt calm throughout the day. The only unusual thing was dealing with the paperwork related to Missy's accident. I ensured she'd be compensated for her vacation and helped her fill out the accident report, knowing she wasn't good with her left hand. She signed it, and I felt a pang of concern for her well-being. "How's home?" she asked. "Not good," I replied. She didn't deny the affair when I confronted her. "Damn, Bill," she said sympathetically. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "You probably don't want to hear my story, but I get it. My ex cheated on me when I was pregnant. I kicked him out before our daughter was born. My mom wasn't pleased. She basically called me disposable." "Wow." "I found it strange when your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night." "She was looking right at your dad," she revealed. "Yeah, I noticed. I'm not sure who, but it makes me think one of them was cheating." "I'm sorry," she offered. "No need. If they're happy deceiving each other, let them. I'd rather not trust a liar, I stated firmly. Kathy wasn't home when I returned from work. She was probably with her lover, and I was furious. I drove to her grocery store, spotted her car, and was surprised to find her with a young man. She noticed me and seemed to yell no as I approached, but I left before she could say anything. If she was cheating, he could have her. I drove home, packed my bags, and decided to stay in a hotel until I found an apartment. Jenny and Jill begged me to stay, but I explained that I caught their mom almost cheating with a man in her car after work. "Dad, there must be a mistake," Jenny pleaded. "I saw what I saw. There's no innocent explanation for her being in the back parking lot with a man in her car," I insisted. "Please don't break up our family," Jenny sobbed. "Your mom did that, not me. I love you girls. I'll keep in touch every day," I reassured them before leaving them in tears and heading to the garage. As I drove out of the garage, Katie nearly hit me as she sped away. The following week was utter torment. I ignored all of my wife's calls, and she bombarded me with messages every hour, likely taking a week off work to do so. Despite pleas from my family and Kathy's sister, none would confirm her infidelity when I asked. Frustrated, I stopped taking their calls, insisting that my daughters avoid mentioning their mother. Eventually, I met with a lawyer and proposed splitting the house equally, even though I could have claimed a larger share due to my larger contributions. Surprisingly, I learned I didn't have to pay alimony since Kathy could support herself. The downside was lacking concrete proof of her affair, which could weaken my case in court. Nonetheless, I was willing to take my chances. My lawyer geared up for divorce proceedings, and life carried on. There'd be no forced mediation or lengthy legal battles. The split was fair, obvious to any judge, but nothing was smooth sailing. When served the papers, she rallied her family against me again. Supposedly, she only cheated once on that Friday before my birthday. Yet her relatives made me out to be the villain for not hearing her out. It was surreal. Even my daughters resisted until I fibbed about a court order for a DNA test. Kathy's letter arrived, admitting to a fling with a 21-year-old, which spared me the need to prove infidelity for the divorce. Finally, karma favored me. She resisted the divorce at first, but the judge approved it when he saw the terms I proposed and her admission of infidelity in the letter. I was to be divorced in 60 days, finding myself isolated for refusing to talk to her. I was labeled immature and a prick. Even my mother and daughters stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I stood by my principles. I called my daughters every day, leaving messages despite their silence. I refused to let them blame me for the lack of communication, making every effort to stay in touch. One change was having coffee with Missy on Sundays. We met at a local coffee shop, where she and Mia lived nearby. I confided in her about my struggles while Mia watched cartoons. "Your daughters will come around, Bill," she reassured. "Living with your wife. Who knows what she's put in their heads?" I hope so. I just miss them terribly. The following week, I returned to the same store at the usual time and was engrossed in reading when I heard a familiar voice say, "Hey, stranger." I smiled and welcomed them to join me again. "Are you stalking me, or is this your usual routine?" she joked. "No, I live nearby and I enjoy having coffee and reading on Sunday mornings. It gets a bit lonely at home," I explained. We chatted about the neighborhood until we parted ways. Meeting every Sunday wasn't planned, but it became a habit. I found her company enjoyable, and little Mia was a delight. On the day the divorce was finalized, I knocked on the front door of my former house. My wife answered, tears evident. Without a word, she invited me in. "Are the girls home?" I inquired. "They're at a school musical. I knew you'd come tonight," she admitted. "So you waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you?" I smirked. "Yes," she admitted. "I knew you'd try to beg and plead, but I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, and there's no forgiveness for that." "It was one mistake, Bill. Why couldn't you forgive me?" she pleaded. "Did you love me when you were with that guy? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday?" I countered. "If that's your version of love, then it's beyond repair." "I never wanted this to happen," she sobbed. "And I never wanted a cheating wife," I retorted. "But here we are." She tried to speak, but I interrupted. "Katie, you not only broke my heart, but you turned my own mother and daughters against me. I'll never forgive you for that." "You acted irrationally," she countered. "If you don't make things right with my family, I'll expose your infidelity to every man you date. I don't need anyone else." Wrong answer. "Then I'll find other ways to hurt and embarrass you," she threatened. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my arm. "It's not my fault," she pleaded. "Oh, really? Did I cheat on you?" I shot back. You've normalized cheating to our daughters. They'll think it's okay because you've convinced them it was a one-time mistake. Well, I won't go down because of some idiot who made you feel hot. I freed my hand from hers. Rot in hell for ending our marriage over a fling, I spat, leaving her in tears, unaffected by her distress. A few weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. Got a second, Bill? Sure, come on in, I replied, though I frowned, anticipating bad news. Bill, does the company have rules about dating coworkers? I disliked this question, hoping to ask her out myself, but it seemed I was too late. No, we have strict intimidation policies. It protects against potential issues arising from workplace relationships, I explained. Good, that's what I hope for, she said, leaving her contact details on my desk. My address and phone number. Let's have dinner tomorrow night. Mia will join us. I smiled and agreed, feeling grateful for the chance at happiness. Hey, it's Dad. Hope you and your sister are doing well. Nothing new here except a coworker asked me out. Anyway, love you and miss you. Call soon. Bye. I knew this message might stir up trouble, but I didn't mind. I needed to move forward, and I was glad Missy had taken the lead. She was not only beautiful, but also had a wonderful character. Her daughter was delightful, and I had already met her parents. I felt like things were finally looking up. Just 15 minutes later, Katie texted me, calling me a fool for already dating. I chuckled at her delusion. I had no intention of mourning the end of my marriage to a cheating wife. At 41, I felt young enough to find love again, even consider having more kids. Missy, in her 30s, might share that desire. It was early to think about such things, but as a single mom, it might be a priority for her. As for me, I hadn't been carnal in months. The next evening after work, I showered, shaved, and dressed casually. Glancing in the mirror, I was satisfied with what I saw. I was in good shape, no extra weight, and my brown hair showed no signs of gray. With a well-paying job and savings, I considered myself a catch, especially for someone like Missy. Yet I realized I had no clue how to navigate the dating scene. Marriage provided comfort and familiarity, from holding hands to intimacy. Dating was uncharted territory. Oh my God. I had to relearn everything about lovemaking. With my ex-wife, I knew exactly what pleased her. Now I just hope the next woman enjoys the same things, or at least has a good rapport with her body. I worried I rushed back into dating too soon. Arriving at her house with wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal for Mia, I aimed to win her favor. When Missy opened the door, I was taken aback. Her curly red hair cascaded around her shoulders, complemented by just the right amount of makeup. She wore a breezy sundress, showcasing her beautiful legs. Barefoot, her hot pink toenails matched her fingernails. Do I pass the test? She teased. God, yes, I blurted before I could retract my words. She chuckled, accepting the gifts and ushering me in. With Mia engrossed in TV, I knelt beside her, offering the stuffed bear. Her apprehension turned to delight as she eagerly took it, scampering off to show Missy. Watching Mia, I reminisced about Jenny and Jill at her age, realizing how much I missed them. What's wrong? Missy inquired, snapping me from my reverie. Forced smile. Nothing. Just thinking about my daughters when they were Mia's age. Is it really that bad? She inquired. They still won't talk to me. Kathy's turned them against me, and I can't change their minds, but I'm still trying. I leave them messages every day, and I won't stop. I'm so sorry, Bill. I know this is awful for you every day, but I know they listen to my messages. I mentioned our date tonight, and Katie texted me, calling me a prick for getting to the point so quickly. Sorry, is that too fast? She bit her lip, looking cute. Maybe, I replied honestly, but I'd be happy to find out with you. She smiled, taking my hand. Dinner is ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce. Sounds great. Oh, I have garlic bread too. So be ready for us to make out on the couch later. Mia giggled, and I was surprised by Missy's candidness. She sensed my awkwardness and said, Bill, we're both adults, and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of man you are, and it doesn't take much to realize that I really like you. You're going to be a hot commodity soon, and I want to stake my claim early. Hot stuff? I quipped. Yep. You have no idea how much buzz the news of your divorce has caused at the store, honey. Your appearance on the market, so to speak, has caught the attention of many unmarried ladies. You're a handsome man in good shape. You're smart, stable, and we all know how you feel about fidelity. When I sat down at her table, I felt quite good, so I'm getting in line early, she concluded. I grasped her hand. I like you too. Mia chimed in. Sketty's my favorite. I like Sketty too. The fattier, the better, I quipped, eyeing the Parmesan cheese jar. And you must have really pungent cheese, I added jokingly. She giggled, correcting me. It's not stinky cheese, it's parm. Parm. Stinky cheese, I teased, pretending to sniff the jar dramatically. Wow, this is really stinky cheese, Missy chuckled, shaking her head as Mia poured a generous amount over the spaghetti. During dinner, we chatted lightly. I inquired about Mia's preschool adventures, and she eagerly shared every detail. It was a delightful exchange. I soon noticed Missy's quiet contentment as she observed us. As she began clearing plates, she joked, "She hasn't shared her favorite TV shows yet." After tucking Mia into bed, Missy joined me on the couch. Handing her a glass of wine, she relaxed and remarked, "Being a mom is the highlight of my day. But moments like these are precious." I instinctively embraced her, and she nestled closer. "It's even busier with two," I admitted. "Do you think your girls will come around?" she asked. "I hope so," I answered, reflecting on their situation. She kissed my cheek and encouraged me not to give up the fight for them. Setting down her glass, Missy leaned back. "Bill, I've made it clear that I really like you. I'm too old to play games. I want to continue seeing you, and that includes inviting you into my life carnally." I started to interject, but she raised a finger. "I know you want to be a gentleman, but you don't have to be. I'm not looking for casual flings. I want an exclusive relationship. My daughter needs a father figure, and I need a husband. That's what I'm offering." I attempted to speak again, only to be met with resistance once more. Typically, guys bolt after this conversation. I don't see you as that type, but I'm offering you an out. If you're looking to play the field, I'm not your match. But if you're interested in building something lasting, then I'm here. "Impressive," I remarked. "Was that rehearsed or spontaneous?" She frowned, misunderstanding my reaction. "Missy, we've had a professional relationship for 3 years. Our recent coffee meetups have been enjoyable. I'm a family man. I've always been. I don't know how to navigate the single scene, and the idea of dating terrifies me. If my wife hadn't strayed, I'd still be happily married. No, I'm not interested in that lifestyle." She smiled, taking my hand. "You're charming, intelligent, and your spaghetti is fantastic." We shared a laugh, and she playfully nudged my shoulder. "I'd like you to be my boyfriend. Let's build something meaningful together, including with your daughter." That night, we refrained from intimacy. Despite the temptation, I opted to take things slow, respecting both our feelings. A stroke of luck came my way when I received an application for a managerial position. Though I never learned the name of the individual who contributed to the demise of my marriage, fate intervened when he applied for the night manager role. Recognizing him instantly, I orchestrated his hiring, anticipating the opportunity for payback. On his second night, I left a 40-inch TV in his car, identical to mine, knowing it would likely be out of stock by morning. I arrived as his shift ended, walking him to his car while discussing his team. Upon noticing the TV in his back seat, I feigned surprise. "Jeff, did you buy that TV today? We're not open yet." "No, Bill, it's not mine. I have no idea how it got there." "Let's head back to the store," I suggested, to which he reluctantly agreed. Back at the store, his fear was palpable. With no night security due to our night crew, I easily disabled the security system, covering the camera with tape. When he saw the system malfunctioning, he grew frantic, insisting on his innocence as I contacted the police. Despite hoping for harsher consequences, he received a misdemeanor in community service. The corporation, finally acknowledging security gaps, installed parking lot cameras. He never suspected my involvement and unsuccessfully attempted to blame his team. His termination was swift and unsurprising. One chilly Saturday morning, a week after my dinner with Missy, I found her waiting in the car to keep warm. As I parked next to her, she greeted me with a kiss and confirmed our dinner plans for the night. "Absolutely," I replied. "Okay, I have something special I'm cooking for us. You won't want to miss it," she added. Before I could respond, Katie's interruption came from behind me. Missy, visibly irritated, addressed her. "Katie, what do you want?" I asked, growing annoyed. "I've been trying to call you. Did you block my number?" "Yeah, after your 30 messages about how I'm an prick for continuing to live. I'm done. What do you want?" "We need to talk about the girls in college," Katie insisted. "They can go wherever they want. I've handled the finances for them. I'd like to be involved, but thanks to you poisoning them against me, they won't talk to me," I replied. Katie suggested the girls feared I wouldn't pay their tuition. Missy interjected with a laugh. "I lost them in the divorce." This retort earned her a glare from Katie, who then blamed me for not forgiving her one slip-up. "You cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and my mother. You better never date again. If I find out, you'll never see a second date," I warned. Missy's rebuttal was sharp. No one wants to date a cheating strumpet unless they're looking for easy lovemaking. I headed towards the store, but heard shouting behind me. Glancing back, I saw Missy confronting Katie, pinning her against the car. "Stay away from my man!" Missy yelled, jabbing her finger. I intervened, pulling Missy away. "Stop it, Missy! She's not worth it!" "You heard me," Katie retorted, storming off. "Please, Katie, just go. It's over between us, and it's your fault," I said, leaving her sobbing by the car. Catching up to Missy, I took her hand. "I'm sorry, Bill. I got too territorial," she admitted. "No worries. Parking lot fights are great for the ego," I joked, and we went inside, laughing. Later, my mom called, but the call cut off abruptly. Concerned, I rushed to her house, ignoring Missy's calls. Arriving, I found the ambulance gone. She'd passed away before reaching the hospital. Alone in the ER lobby, I pondered her last words. Then Missy called. "Hey, my mom just passed away." "Oh, Bill, I'm deeply sorry to hear that. Yes, thank you. I'm worried I won't be much company tonight." "No worries, I'll be there for you." "You need me. Please let me come over." "All right, yes." Expressing my reluctance to be alone, I was grateful she agreed to keep me company. "I'm heading home now. I'll meet you there after you finish up." "All right, I'll be there soon." After finishing my conversation, I drove to my old house instead of heading home. I felt compelled to speak to my daughters, regardless of their willingness to see me. Arriving, I noticed both of their cars parked in the driveway, feeling a wave of apprehension. Entering through the garage, I was relieved not to find Kathy's car, as I wasn't ready to face her. The downstairs rooms were empty, so I made my way upstairs to the bedrooms. "Daddy!" Jill exclaimed as I entered her room. "What's up?" shouted Jenny, following behind me. "Did you come here to beg? Well, you can leave," Jill retorted. "Grandma had a heart attack and passed away this morning," I interjected. They both gasped. "I felt it was important to share this news in person. Now I feel like I've damned myself," I added. I exited and shut the door, ignoring Jenny's call to wait, and drove off. I headed to the small lake where we once shared joyous moments. Despite the chilly weather, the tranquil waters brought solace. Seated at a picnic bench, tears welled up again, not just for my mother, but for the estrangement from my daughters. Jenny's anger conveyed all I needed to know. Doubts crept in about my past actions, not with Katie, but with my girls. What had I done to earn their resentment? Katie's betrayal had shattered our family, yet my daughters couldn't see it. Lost in thought, I heard footsteps nearing. Turning, I found Katie and the girls approaching. "How did you find me here?" I turned back to the lake. "You forgot to turn off our Find My Phone app," Kathy replied. "Bill, I'm sorry about your mom," she added. "Yeah," I muttered. "Do you regret her pass away or turning her against me?" She fell silent. "Leave me alone. I can't deal with your stuff right now," I said. "I'll never forgive you." The last time we spoke, she insisted she wouldn't talk to me until I backed out of the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me before hanging up. "I'm so sorry, Bill," she said before leaving. Then Jenny spoke up. "Dad, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being rude." They both rushed over to hug me and we cried together. "It's not my fault, girls. Your mother's actions broke us apart," I said. "We're sorry, Dad," Jill said. "We just wanted you to forgive her. She loves you. It's obvious." "Not enough to stay faithful," I replied. "Jill." "I'm sorry, girls," I said tearfully. We hugged again while Kathy watched from the car. "Girls, I need you. You'll leave for college soon and I'll miss you. We're wasting time," I said. "We understand, Daddy," Jenny said. "We won't shut you out anymore." "I wish Grandma had the chance to do the same," Jill added. "Can we come with you, Daddy? We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could grab pizza." "Sure, let your mom know, and let's head out." As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Missy's car. I had forgotten she was coming. "Looks like you'll meet Missy," I told the girls. "Is she your girlfriend?" they asked simultaneously, making me chuckle. "Yeah, well, we just started dating." Look at him blushing. "So cute, Jenny." They dashed out of the car and bombarded Missy with questions, leaving her bewildered. "Girls, give her a break. Help her inside, and I'll introduce you properly." They kissed my cheek and hurried to the garage while I approached Missy. "Sorry about that," I said. She opened the door with a radiant smile and kissed my cheek. "Your daughters?" she asked. I nodded. "Come on, let's make proper introductions." "I hope I look okay. I must look awful." "You're fine. They'll like you, Jenny." "Jill, meet Missy," I said. They embraced Jenny and cheekily declared, You're super hot," Jill exclaimed. "Good for you, Daddy," Missy laughed, leaving me too stunned to respond. "Let's do a quick tour of the house. Then I need to handle some things for Grandma's services. Bill, I'll order pizza while you show them around." "Perfect. You read my mind." "Ooh," the girls cooed. As Missy smiled, I made the decision to wait until the next morning to inform others about my mom's passing. I'll draft an obituary for Monday's paper and share service details on Facebook. Tomorrow evening, after visiting the funeral home, we spent hours sharing stories about my mom and my girls, with a few embarrassing tales about myself thrown in to keep Missy entertained. It wasn't my fault I slipped on the wet pier and fell into the lake. Before we knew it, it was already 10. "Girls, time is slipping away and it's getting late," I remarked. They frowned and asked if they could stay the night. "I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet," I explained. "Tell you what, I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out for breakfast." "Okay, and if you don't mind, we could help sort through Grandma's things too," Jill offered. "Thank you," I replied. "Missy, would you like to join us for a ride or do you need to go home to Mia? She's staying with my parents." Jill's curiosity piqued. "Who's Mia?" "Mia is my 4-year-old daughter," I revealed. Excited, they both squealed, expressing their eagerness to meet her. Missy chuckled at their enthusiasm. "Someday soon, I promise." As we returned to my house, Missy commented, "They're great girls. I'm glad you were able to reconnect with them." I sighed. "Me too. I just wish it didn't take my mom's passing to bring us back together." With Missy nestled in my arms, I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I awoke to find Missy still snuggled against me under a blanket. Feeling a sense of longing for closeness, I kissed her head and apologized for falling asleep. She moaned, stretching. "It's okay, baby. You've had a very emotional day. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast?" "Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning. Of course, my daughters will love her." Needing to fetch Mia, I arranged to meet my daughters at IHOP. As I walked in holding Mia's hand, my girls rushed over. They embraced Mia, twirled her in the air, and showered her with kisses, making her squeal and giggle with joy. "We need to go to the bathroom," the girls announced in unison. "We'll take her," they said, whisking Mia away. "I don't know, Missy. Do you think they'll get along?" I asked, smirking. She playfully clapped me on the shoulder and kissed my cheek. "I hope they remain friends for years to come." Although it was just our first date, she expressed a long-term commitment, which was a bit surprising but reassuring. As we ate, Mia and my daughters chatted incessantly about everything. Mia showed genuine interest in their lives, peppering them with questions. My daughters, accustomed to babysitting, engaged effortlessly with Mia, bonding over shared interests in kids' shows and movies. Surprisingly, they also got along well with Missy, showing no hostility or anger toward her, unlike their initial reaction to my dating. This puzzled me, and I planned to discuss it with them later. After a busy day of phone calls, cleaning my mom's house, and visiting the funeral home, I finally relaxed when the girls returned for dinner, and Missy and Mia went their separate ways. During breakfast, Missy suggested avoiding the emotional strain of Mia's questions while sorting out my mom's house. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny asked abruptly. "We've only seen each other a few times outside of work. It's too early to say it's love." "Okay, Dad," Jill said, sounding like I was clueless. "You know those cartoons where girls get dreamy-eyed and hearts flutter? That's Missy when she looks at you," Jill said before I could object. They exchanged looks and then declared, "We like her." I went from joy to anger. Setting my pizza down, I headed to the sink to cool off. "Daddy," Jenny asked, "how could you shut me out all this time and now say you like my girlfriend? What did I do to deserve this? Do you know how many times I cried after leaving you messages you didn't care to hear?" "Mom made us what?" I exclaimed. Jill explained, "It began when Mom said if you felt distant, you could return to her, and we'd be a family again. We're truly sorry." Turning to Jenny, I saw her eyes tear up, and she rushed to hug me. "Dad, we're so sorry." "When that didn't work, she said you abandoned us and wouldn't pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She claimed your messages during the divorce were just tactics to win favor with the judge." "You believed her?" "Dad, imagine sitting with her every day, hearing her defend one mistake against 20 years of love. We thought you were being unfair. What if it was you? Would you forgive your boyfriend for cheating?" No response. "Where's the line?" I demanded. "Unclear." "Give me a clear answer." They wept, and our hug calmed me. "I've missed you both so much," I said. After they professed their love, I reminded them, "Time to go home. School's tomorrow. Make sure your mom tells them about the wake and funeral. You'll need time off this week. One last embrace. Then I watched them drive off, feeling warmth inside. Looking at the sky, I whispered, "Mom, you didn't have to leave to bring my girls back, but thank you. I'll miss you." Wakes are always hard for me. Being near a deceased body is unsettling. My mom's wake was especially tough. Approaching her casket brought me solace, seeing her peaceful face. I knew she'd reunite with my late father, who avoided wakes. Mom planned hers meticulously, even choosing the casket. It was a relief knowing she had everything sorted. Chatting with one of her friends, Katie and my daughters arrived. Tearful hugs from the girls greeted me, while Katie stepped aside respectfully. After the prayer, Kathy placed something in the casket, then sat alone at the back. I saw it was a photo of Kathy, me, and my mom, all holding our babies, beaming. Touched, I took the photo and put it by my mom's hands, tears welling up. During the service, Kathy stayed seated at the back, chatting with everyone. Her bond with family members and their affection for her showed her enduring presence in our lives. The standard rule was for immediate family to sit in the front row, but it didn't feel right. Seeing Katie at the back, tears in her eyes. I knew Mom wouldn't have wanted it that way. Walking over, I invited her to join us. "Come here. No need to hide." She hugged me gratefully, whispering a thank you. Back in front, my Uncle John offered her his seat, earning Missy's praise. Holding Missy's hand while my ex-wife was nearby felt surreal. I hoped it wouldn't cause trouble later. As we said goodbye to the last visitors, Kathy thanked me for welcoming her into the family, offering to share the limo ride. Missy's hand on my waist, I feared tension, but Katie's departure eased it. "Let's get you home," Missy said, embracing me. In the kitchen, relieved the day was over, I handed Missy a cold beer. She thought things went well with Kathy. "Yeah, I'm glad. I half expected her to cause trouble with you." "The girls probably helped. We'll be okay after tomorrow." I hoped she was right. Maybe I was just paranoid about Katie and Missy. "Will you stay over tonight?" She squeezed my hand. "You couldn't kick me out if you tried." We didn't make love, but her presence brought the best sleep since the divorce. "You're keeping a close eye on me. I won't misuse your kindness by starting a fight," Kathy remarked as we waited for the service to begin. "I know I lied. I just feel uneasy about it." She snorted, adding, "How do you think I feel? I'm an outcast here, a disgrace." I frowned. "No one sees you that way, especially not today. I'm sorry, Bill. I wish I could undo it all." "I wish," she said, tears welling up before hurrying off to the bathroom. "It's tough for all of us, Bill." My mother's friend Jean comforted me, patting my shoulder. "Your mom was wonderful, and we'll all miss her." I kissed her cheek, grateful that Kathy had her mom to support her through the tears. After the funeral, we gathered at my mother's favorite Polish restaurant. Kathy looked uneasy as she searched for a seat. Taking her hand, I guided her to the table where Missy and my daughters sat. "Kathy, we'll always be family. Despite the divorce, no matter where we sit, you're always welcome." A tear rolled down her cheek as she thanked me, and in that moment I felt like I'd finally let go of the pain she caused. Life moved on. The girls Skype with me weekly while they're at college. Missy and I are going strong, and I'm considering popping the question soon. Katie and I don't talk much, but it's always friendly. She's moving on too, dating a nice divorced dad who's a friend of one of the girls. I wish them the best. Some may say I should forgive her one mistake, but I can't. I may be seen as the villain by some, but I'm at peace with myself.